Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This is for UFC Macau. Producer Jared is on the stairs. Cody Saftig is on the line. We've got a deal for you. Go to coolbet.com. Use promo code Dog or Pass. Get a match up to $200 on your first deposit. There's 3x rollover on, to make sure that your money gets completely cleared. So essentially, deposit $200, make $600 of bets, and the extra $400 is yours to keep. It's about as easy of a rollover as you can possibly do. Cody, how was UFC 309 for you there, bud?
Yeah, it was a really entertaining card. Hit the top ticket, so at least we didn't lose any money. Ended up being okay. But the Friday Jake Paul fight, we broke it down at length last week. Free money. I'll admit, one little screw up that I had is I had Jake Paul obviously everywhere, and then I had the over 5.5 rounds. But I should have just taken fight goes the distance. It was obviously that he wasn't going to beat up Mike Tyson. They're playing around. I should have had the gall to just full out take. Even the Jake Paul by decision, like I could have got a little greedy with it, but the free money was the money line. The free money was the over 5.5 rounds. Whatever, you're not going to complain. UFC 309 card, infinitely more entertaining and doesn't have any streaming issues, but at the same time, not as profitable. I prefer to bet bum fights these days. Regional card events, stuff that's flying super low key. Anthony Pettis had an event on the Sunday, bettable. I can't tell you where, but bettable on a lot of books. And it's just like free money. His cousin is fighting a guy that's 0-7, and he's minus 800. Well, I know that sounds deep, but it's not. It's not. His cousin Angelo is fighting a guy who's 0-7. And you know who the matchmaker for Anthony Pettis FC is? Oh, it's Anthony Pettis. Minus 800. So you can find those little value pieces. When I see the UFCs now, they get cooked. Everybody's on it. It's the heavy market. It's got, big numbers behind it. People are betting in advance. The favorites are just way too big of favorites. The underdogs don't seem to be coming through. The even money guys, they're all flip of the coin 50-50 fights. So I will say here, Paul, the UFC usually takes a break after a big pay-per-view. There's like a lull, right? Hangover effect. You don't want to just throw out a fight night, kind of gets brushed over. Now we're getting a fight night in Macau that they don't even probably really want to do. Just seems like a total waste, but this here, if you're watching this show, you're a hardcore. And this right here, this is why Paul and I do this. Because I will tell you a little story, because obviously you're hardcore. The very first show we ever did, April 11th, well, it was probably like April 9th that we recorded it, but it was for the April 11th Fight Night Abu Dhabi 2014. So over 10 years ago now, April 11th, me, Paul, Ken Carter. It was a 3-man show and it started off. Ken Carter did the first 19 shows as the third man on the Dogger Pass podcast, which at the time was Bookie Beatdown. And then on the 20th show, Paul, they went to Macau, China. There was 6 Chinese fighters on the card that night. And Ken Carter quit the show saying there's too many Chinese guys. I can't even keep up no more. That was August 23rd, 2014. So the old boy got 19 shows in him over less than a year's time frame. Quit. We got 10 or 11 Chinese fighters on this card, Paul, and we're still doing it. I think you've missed 3 shows in the 10 years. I've missed 1 show in the 10 years. This is why we do it. We love it. So even though this is an awful card in China that starts at 3 a.m, better red than dead. What else you got to do at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, right? So count me in. Let's do this.
Maybe we should call up Ken Carter to find us some winners on this card, because it's good, especially like some of these road to UFC finals. Like looking at some of the tape, you're like, I don't really like either one of these guys long term, but you have to look at it from the matchup that they're in. But we have a banger of a main event, in fairness. We got Petr Yan taking on Deiveson Figueiredo, minus 312 at Coolbet for Petr Yan. Deiveson Figueiredo can be had for plus 250. What's your thoughts on this one, Code?
Yeah, it's cool because, again, the card starts at 3 a.m, but the main event's not going to go off until, 9 a.m. So everybody can tune in for this one, and it's a great main event. You got Petr Yan, who's, in my opinion, I can't call him the uncrowned king because Marab did make him look foolish, but there was a time there where it's like, this guy's the best 35er on the roster. He's a complete package. He's got cardio for days, so 5-round situations, no problem. Eclipsing over 100 significant strikes, landed, no problem. Grappling, solid, shows 85% takedown defense. And he's taken on the best grapplers in the division, whether it be Merab Dvalishvili, who took him down. Oh, this is the greatest stat of all time. Took him down 11 times on 49 attempts. Yeah, 49 takedown attempts for Merab Dvalishvili. Got him down 11 times. You got to give him that. On 49 attempts. Him versus Aljamain Sterling, the rematch. Damn, Aljamain got him down twice. Aljamain got him down twice on 22 attempts. You better get him down and hold him down, because if not, man, he is up. And the thing with Aljamain, such a good grappler, especially at 135, he's able to just get both hooks in, backpack him right away, hold him down for 3 of the 5 rounds, win those rounds, win the fight. But other guys, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a big problem. Figgy's a giant power puncher. He's got nasty knockout power in both hands. He can switch stances. He can launch from both sides. He throws from the hip. He's a knockout guy, but he's not a volume guy. He's prone to getting outworked. So what he's been doing lately, especially because he's now moved up from 125 to 135, where the power is not as good as it was at 125, is that he's relying on his wrestling like heavily. So his fights at 135, Rob Font, he took him down 4 times, Figgy did. His fight with Cody Garbrandt, former state champ out of Ohio in high school, took him down the 1 time and submitted him. His fight with Marlon Vera, he got the 3 takedowns. Outside of that, I mean, he's prone to get outworked. Rob Font outlanded him in that fight, 46-45. Cody Garbrandt was outlanding him 16-13. Marlon Vera, who he beat, outstruck him 52-45. He's getting outworked in all these spots, but it's his ability to score a quick knockdown and a quick takedown which can win these rounds. Seems to me in a 3-round fight, perfect. I only got to land one knockdown and a quick takedown. I can win 2 of these 3 rounds. But in a 5-round situation, you saw, yeah, he did beat Moreno one time in a 5-rounder over a split, but he got severely outworked in that fight. He got landed 105-86. His 3 knockdowns save him. Well, knocking out Petr Yan, good luck. It's possible. It's an MMA fight, and Figgy is a power puncher. But, I mean, that's not the clear path to victory. If you're not knocking him out, you got to outwork him. That's not going to happen because Petr Yan's got a motor on him like a Rolls Royce. So what's the path to victory? Take him down. Yeah, okay. But over 5 rounds, that's easier said than done. Against a 135er that's bigger than these flyweights that you've taken down in the past. Rob Font can't wrestle. Let's be real. Cody Garbrandt's at the end of his run. Marlon Vera, the path to victory is quite literally take the guy down. Those guys maybe. Petr Yan, I'm not saying Figgy's not going to take him down. I just mean over 5 rounds, you're going to have to do it a lot of times. You got Aljamain shooting 22. You got Merab shooting 49. Figgy can't do that, dog.
No.
There's a reason he's not a volume puncher. He's got a limited gas tank, so he picks and chooses his spots. So here's the only 2 things I can really see going wrong. 1, Jan's a slow starter. Like, he'll often give away the first round or 2. You've seen the Corey Sandhagen fight. You've seen his fight with Vera. He's not exactly in a real sense of urgency. So a guy like Figgy that might be able to bank a couple early rounds and then pull something off late, whether it be a knockdown or whether it be, a critical moment in a close round, don't give up the first 2 rounds, man. You got to go right away. He's a fast starter. You're a slow starter. You got to kind of meet him halfway and not give him that early advantage just in case things go wrong late. The second thing is, for whatever reason, Jan, even in defeat, he always looks good. The one fight where he did not look good, in my opinion, was the Sean O'Malley fight. And people thought he won. I thought he won at the time. But, like, he's real tentative in that fight. He has over-reliant on his own offensive takedowns. Takes O'Malley down 6 times, but then really doesn't do anything with it. It's kind of a stale performance. If he doesn't come out guns a-blazing, if he tries to match Figgy shot for shot, Figgy's going to have the advantage on the bigger shots, the bigger moments. It's like you got to do more time with the other 4 minutes of the round to make it clear. So I got Jan by decision. I got the over on this fight. Gonna be a good fight, boy, let me tell you. But I'm gonna go with Petr Yan to get the job done.
Yeah, I would love Figueiredo in a 3-round fight between the 2 of these guys, but
fair.
But
yeah.
It's 5 rounds, and I think that the line is definitely more accurate. Yeah, like plus 250, Deiveson Figueiredo in a 3-round fight, I'd be all over it. Just because I don't have to worry about rounds 4 and 5, where Petr Yan typically does his best work and has pretty much an endless gas tank. That Merab fight getting taken down 11 times on 49 attempts is like the entire fight literally just became him having to defend takedowns. Like, there was no intermediary fight. It was just literally just, this guy's on my hips all fight. Deiveson can't do that. Deiveson would gas himself out far too early for that. Yeah, I think it gets super, super crazy. I think the more, like, in terms of who I am picking to win, and I think the margins on this money line are, like, slim to nil. It's Petr Yan because it being a 5-round fight. Even looking at, like, the round 4 and 5 props for Petr Yan, who there's no guarantee that he's going to be able to get the finish back then. They're pretty short already. They're, like, 10-1, 15-1. Like, I feel like historically those were like always 20, 25-1 when you got to like the late round props. So it's like everything seems to be priced in pretty correctly, to be perfectly honest. I think Yan wins on volume. I think it's a much better live bet. Just wait out the first 2 rounds. You may miss your opportunity altogether. Maybe Petr Yan just wins all the striking exchanges, wrestling gets negated, and then all of a sudden the minus 300 is a minus 800 after 2 rounds. Well, you missed the boat at that point, but there is a scenario where Deiveson is able to get some wrestling going early, is able to keep it very competitive on the striking numbers early, and maybe you get Yan closer to like a pick'em after round 2. So that's, God willing, I'm awake. I mean, at that point, I'll be awake. It's 9 o'clock in the morning.
God willing, I'm awake by 9.
I plan to set an alarm, but like, you know, and you know how if they knew they got me by the balls, Cody, because they put the Legend of Mahashat in the opener, the curtain jerker. If they put Feng Xiaocan versus Ming in that opener, I may not be waking up for the first fight at night. You put the Legend of Mahashat versus Nicholas Moda, I'll be setting an alarm clock. But yeah, Petr Yan will be the pick, but outside of like long degen parlays and stuff, I don't see myself getting too invested in it. We got Xiaonan taking on Tabatha Ricci, minus 204 for Xiaonan. Tabatha Ricci can be out for plus 170. I mean, Xiaonan took a massive beating, but we were there in Vegas at Circa, I believe.
She put up a good fight, man.
That fight, and what rounds 2 and 3 started come on. She had some serious success. I think she's really improved her grappling. Tabatha Ricci has a knack for making fights very, very close. Striking should be favored on the Yan side here, but can Ricci get enough takedowns, get enough control time to eke out a decision? I think it's possible. But you factor in judging the part of the world that we're on, I think it's a rightful favorite. As long as she comes back from a very significant, like the late rounds against the champ there were pretty ugly. It got pretty nasty, to be perfectly honest. As long as everything's, you know, all the ducks are in a row and she's feeling healthy and good coming into this camp, I can see why she's a minus 200 favorite. But like another fight that I think is probably pretty properly priced, to be perfectly honest. Like there doesn't seem to be too much meat on the bone. I could definitely see this being a split. I could see this fight going. I obviously see this fight going to decision. Yeah, it's a tricky one. Wouldn't be surprised if Ricci pulls it out, but Xiaonan with the more devastating punches will be the pick. I think when she lands, she'll be landing with a lot more ferocity and merit. She just got to stay off of her back, and if she does get taken down, get back up immediately, because that's how she loses this fight. Your takes?
Yeah, man, even more reason to enact the CF dot model as far as I'm concerned. Like you mentioned, you think this is going to be a close competitive fight that likely goes to decision, and I'm going to agree with you. Tabatha Ricci, when she first came to the UFC, takes a debut on short notice, up a weight class against Mano Fiorot, and she's like 26 years old, so she's kind of out of her element. She's a world champion Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She got excellent grappling, but the takedowns are not necessarily there. The striking's not necessarily there. But you look at her growth, man. She very next fight, 5 takedowns against Maria Oliveira, 5 takedowns against Poliana Viana, 4 takedowns against Jessica Penne, 3 takedowns against Jillian Robertson. Look, Penne's a black belt. Poliana Viana's a black belt. Jillian Robertson's a black belt. Took them all down multiple times. Runs into Lupita Godinez, and in that fight, couldn't take her down. Now, Lupi's, again, bigger than her. So without the takedowns and the ability to get these fights to the ground, she's got to rely on her secondary skill set, which is striking. She's not a great striker. It's a competitive fight. It's a close fight. She lands 84 significant strikes on Lupi Godinez, but does not win the fight. The very next two, Tisha Torres, close fight where she probably could have lost. But her ability, she did. Yeah, I thought she lost too. And I bet her, I thought she lost. But she did get the takedown. It was 1-1 going into the third. She was chasing a lot of takedowns. Again, she's forced to rely on her secondary skill set, which is I can't take her down. So now I'm chasing and I'm trying to strike, and kept it close enough that 2 judges gave it to her. And then against Angela Hill, 3 takedowns, 101 significant strikes landed, wins the fight. As you mentioned, they're generally always going to decision. They're close and competitive, but she's taken down her opponent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In 6 of her last 7 fights, she's taken down her opponent. Her 2 losses are the both times in her fights, once on Contender Series, once in her debut and once against Lupi. Her 2 losses in the UFC, both times she couldn't get her opponent to the ground. So we know the style that she's at. There's no doubt she's making improvements still. It's that she's very reliant on this, I need to get the fight to the ground style. And I think that bodes well against Jan. Jan got exposed bad in that Carla Esparza fight, whereas Carla not only just took her down with ease, but once she took her down, she put an absolute mauling on her. Now, Carla, we have a love-hate relationship, but Carla wins fights by decision, Paul. She'll dominate you on the ground a little bit positionally, but Carla absolutely tanked her. Her fight with Marina Rodriguez, close, competitive, no threat of the takedown. Mackenzie Dern took her down twice. Now that's problematic because Mackenzie Dern's got like a 14% takedown accuracy in the UFC. She doesn't want to take it on anybody. But Mackenzie Dern's able to take her down and keep that fight relatively competitive. It was a majority decision. And then, of course, her last fight was Zhang Weili. So these are my 2 points on that fight, is that Zhang Weili, we had her on every single parlay. If Zhang loses, I'm screwed. I'm screwed. I'm in Vegas and I'm about to come back as one of those guys that they're like, anything declare, and it's just like, no, man. No, man. And they're like, you're in Vegas, and you're like, yeah. And they're like, they got the better of you. And you're like, oh, yeah. The first round, we're drinking VIP at the top of, I don't think I can name the bar anymore, or the place. No, check it out though. Great spot. Doesn't matter. We're having a great time. She chokes out Yan like nothing. Yan goes unconscious. The round ends. Yan's corner wakes her up. They tell the referee, we can wake her up. They lift her up, which is not even legal in the UFC no more. Carry her back to her stool, put her down, and damn, dude, she woke up. She woke up and she was like full zombie mode. And then she starts winning rounds. And then she heard Zhang. And what saved us there, because it went from easy win to super sweaty, was the takedowns. Was Zhang's ability to get those takedowns. Why? Because she got 6 takedowns, and she got 12 minutes and 45 seconds of control time in those 5 rounds. That was her get out of jail free card. Is that Yan's big, dude. She's got 4 inches on Tabatha Ricci. She's got a reach advantage on Tabatha Ricci. She's big for this division. Ricci's lost to bigger fighters. That is problematic. No doubt about it. The difference is those other big fighters had some grappling to fall back on. Yan, I'm not so sure. Whenever Zhang Weili was able to just take her down, she didn't really have an ability to get back up. Zhang almost subbed her and put her out. Did sub her and put her out. Put her out unconscious. Tabatha's got a nasty ground game of her own. So there's a world here where some of those takedowns, you don't need 10 of them. You might only need 2 or 3 of them. Get the takedown, set up shop on top. She's got a little bit of ground and pound. She just landed over 100 significant strikes against Angela Hill. She works her a little bit on top, fishes for some submissions, improves position, neutralizes her for 2 of the 3 rounds. Because again, co-main event, but it's only a 3-rounder. Yeah, she's a live underdog. So I see a world where Yan couldn't win too, sure. But at minus 200, I don't want to live in that world. I want to live in the one where Tabatha Ricci scores here as an underdog. You can make it juicier by taking Ricci by decision. But again, buyer beware, the submission is on the table. So, not every favorite's going to win. I would say Ricci's a live underdog I'm willing to take a shot on.
Yeah, and Ricci by decision, I can't imagine it's very generous.
No, but she's already the betting underdog, so it's probably
but like how many more points? How many better? Oh, I bet you it's less. Less. Checking it right now. Ricci by decision plus 225. Okay, yeah, so you were right.
65 points better?
55 points better.
Doesn't matter. Books are books. It's going to fluctuate. But what I'm saying is, that's probably the path of victory with the Ricci fight. And Jan's tough. And she's not going to tap. So that's a good thing if you want this thing to go to decision. She's willing to die, apparently. So, It's in China. That's one thing that's like, if this fight was in Vegas, I'd feel better for Ricci. It's in China. But as you know, when they come to Canada, when they go to the UK, when they go to Abu Dhabi, it's the same bum refs that come, or judges, sorry, that go with them on the road. So it doesn't really matter where you are. There's bad decisions everywhere.
For any, but like for the people who think like all sports are rigged and stuff, though, this scenario of fights starting like middle of the night, like even on the West Coast, like, you know, if you're out in Vegas, these fights are starting at, you know, like the main card's starting at 4 o'clock in the morning. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
you're
it's a tough
in
one
the
all
part of
over.
China that is like the only part of China where you're allowed to gamble. It's like it's
The Vegas of China.
it's an executive like area that's like outside of the general rules. It's kind of like the Las Vegas of China. We've been over in this part of what was the fight, Cody, where that line completely flipped and then homie didn't actually go.
Tae
Bang versus Leo
Kuntz.
Kuntz. Yeah, that line flipped like from like minus 380 to like the opposite side minus like 380. I don't know why I said 380, but like it flipped like 30% in win probability just in the middle of the night, just randomly. And then we found out later that like Tae Bang was supposed to take the dive and then he got cold feet and then he got death threats. So
He got cold feet. He proceeded to try to knock out Kuntz. He dropped him twice. Like, that fight was actually decent. And then the judges awarded him a split decision. So he still almost lost and could have. Like, you could tell he wasn't trying to throw. The UFC told him, we know that there's some suspicious activity going on. So if it looks like you're trying to throw this fight, like, you're done. You're going to jail. So he proceeded to go out and fight like a Mexican. He just went caution to the wind. Pretty good fight. Pretty good fight. In that fight, the fighter got tipped off, you need to throw it. The judges weren't in on it. Otherwise, they could have very easily just gone split decision for Kuntz. It was a close fight. Could have gone Kuntz, no one would have complained. But it's harder to pay off two guys than one, right? So two mouths talking to, loose lips sink the ship. So better to just approach the one guy and get the one deal done. So I could see it happening. It's,
if you were ever going to
happen throughout the history of the world. It definitely happened again. James Krause is another case in point, a little bit different, but same mindset. We're gonna work one. Yeah, I bet you it happens all over.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I don't know. This seems like the card. If you were ever gonna rig a fight, wouldn't be a bad place to do it. Nobody's even half the people who bet on this stuff are probably gonna be sleeping. Like, they're not waking up for a lot of these fights to watch them. The hardcores like us, like, we'll watch and we'll, maybe those people will catch on social media that people say that some funny business was going on, but like, let's face it, 90% of people who like maybe put down a bet on this fight are going to wake up in the morning, roll over, look at their phone and be like, oh, hey, that won or that lost. Like, that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, but that's what I've started to realize is when we started the show 10 years ago, there was an edge because nobody knew who any of these guys were. So it was easy to just pick up these gold little tidbits and then run with them and then they would pay off. But then the more it got advanced, it's like everybody was on the tidbits and people started making adjustments and lines started getting smarter and adjusting to the strategy. So now you have to go after other stuff. What I would say, and I can't name names here, but I bet on a regional show fight the other day. It was in a parlay. The one guy is 3-0. He's a high level BJJ purple belt, but I mean, like, this kid, he's young and he's subbing black belts and comps. He's subbing full grown men. He's 3-0. It's really good. The other guy's 4-0. He's from North Carolina and he's drunk in the hotel lobby the entire 2 days leading up to weigh-ins in the fight and is a bum, but he's 4-0. But he's fought nobody because it's on just some dirty little regional, which you can bet. This is all bettable, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like the kid's like minus 145. It wasn't like he was an underdog or anything like that. They figured he probably would win, but it's like this guy's the lock. He's the biggest lock possible that you could possibly find. If it was a UFC fight, everybody would know that the one kid is a whiz kid who's undefeated and will go on to go 10-0 and get signed to the UFC. And the other guy's just some bum from North Carolina or South Carolina that fought a couple regional show guys himself and again is not with it. He's getting a travel. I got to travel down. The nerves are getting to him. He's a middle-aged man. He worked construction all the week before leading up. Like, it's just, but nobody knows about that because it's just getting buried. You can find those little gems. You can find these little. So all of a sudden you got a Jake Paul that's minus 200 and you got this kid who's minus 145 and you get, there's so many of them all over the place. We'll talk about Tyson Pedro a little bit later because we'll talk about that Zhang guy. Tyson Pedro was supposed to have a pro boxing match last night in New Zealand. Card started at 3 a.m. I watched it. And it's just like a bunch of straight mismatches. Like a couple MMA fighters boxing, mostly just guys that they're trying to bring up. Nobody pays attention to any of that stuff. It just flies under the radar. This stuff, everybody's on it. So you don't find those little hidden gems. You find a lot of what ifs. You know what the what ifs are? We'll talk about them all. But Ricci, because she could keep it close. Muslim Salikhov, because Kenan's so goddamn hittable. Ozzy Diaz, because it's just banger versus banger. Who the hell knows? These road to the UFC fights, because these guys are about the same level and they're all untested. There's underdogs that are going to hit across the board, but it's just like it's harder to find an angle. Whereas these wrestler guys that were minus 2, 3, 4, 500 will always go off at minus 8 or 100, minus 900. Some Russian guys all of a sudden minus 1200. Some guy from Georgia's all of a sudden at minus 850. Like it just swings so heavily in the half hour leading up. So CLV, I don't believe in it, but maybe adding some of these pieces that nobody's putting any time and process into thinking out, like maybe that is the road.
The road
Who
to
knows,
profit is the road to the UFC.
I just feel like when I look at my numbers, I do so much better on regional show events, where it used to be just regional shows are a crapshoot that you're doing because there's nothing to do on a Friday night. And then you were waiting for the marquee product, which you had an edge on. Now the marquee product, I'm not having a great year in the sense that we're not hitting these third line, fourth line, fifth line PRP tickets. I'm not having a bad year in the sense that I'm not getting smoked on a bunch of top tickets. But if you're just betting the top ticket, you're up. I don't just bet the top ticket. Because you're always chasing a little something more, right? It's not enough to just hit that 3-fight parlay. You want to hit a 5-fight parlay. You want to hit a 6-fight parlay. You want to hit a 7-fight parlay. That's just getting so increasingly difficult. We can still hit the 2s. We can still hit the 3s. On good weeks, we'll hit a 4 or a 6. But when I look at the regional side of things, it's like I can craft between 5 or 6 organizations. Just take one guy from the KSW show, right? Just take one guy from the Octagon MMA show. Just take one guy from the LFA show. There's 2 guys you like on the PFL show. There's 3 guys you like on this UFC show. All of a sudden, it's like, damn, dude, you got a 10-fight parlay. But it's like, I literally picked from 60 fights the exact 6 that I like the most. And that feels way better than forcing something on a jammed up fight night Macau 13-fight offering at 3 a.m, right? So, yeah, the older you get, it's more like bankroll management, smarter plays. Like that's what's going to give you longevity. We've been doing this for 10 years, Paul. People can say whatever they want about us, but they can't say we don't have longevity. And then we've kept at this, and you can't just lose all the time and keep going. You know, we've done this for over a decade, and I still provide for my family with this. I can't ask for anything more, but you got to see the cautions, man. It's getting to be a tough racket.
Yeah. It's there used to be, and like I know you don't really care about CLV, but it's like a lot, like early in the week you used to be able to like bet certain numbers and you'd beat that number by like 100 points, like not even props, like money lines and stuff. You'd beat like line movements by like 100 points. And these days not so much. It's like a lot of that, you know, beating that number is like you bet this fight card like 3 weeks ago. And then the numbers that you bet 3 weeks ago, basically like openers and stuff, like they're long gone by the time you get to fight week. Yeah. Like everything is so settled these days compared to where it was even right before the pandemic. I think the pandemic was like the big turning point, because every other sport got canceled, and the UFC, you know, went to Yas Island, you know, for Fight Island and all of that. And the UFC was the only show in town. So it's like the books were taking crazy amount of action from people who usually don't bet UFC, but were looking for some way to get some action in. And the books were basically forced to get good at the UFC. That's my humble opinion on it, that the last like 3 years or so, there's definitely been improvements, especially just in terms of the market keeping up with each other. Because, yeah, like by the time you do this show, and by the time you release the PRP on Saturday morning, or I guess this week it'll be like Friday night that you release it, like there's the amount that has gotten like cut off of value from like, you know, in terms of like the end result of like if you parlayed all those picks together, the amount of money that's been like scrapped from that is pretty astounding. But yeah,
you know, but again, right? This UFC this past weekend, Charles Oliveira winning. Oh my God, great. But all my main tickets, they didn't even have him on it. I only needed the two big ones. I needed John Jones to go out there and do his thing. And who was the other colossal favorite? Not Ruffy. Oh, Bo Nickel. I only needed John Jones and Bo Nickel. When I looked at the other favorites on the cards, guys like Ruffy, who, for the record, I took a shot against him. It was a scrap, man. A hell of a scrap. Okay. Friday night, bettable option. Nick Maximov. People will remember him from the UFC. Nick Maximov's fighting a 10-7 Brazilian journeyman by the name of Kevin Felipe for Uriah Faber's A1 promotion. It's the headliner for Uriah Faber's title. It's only a 3-round fight. And Nick Maximov is minus 500. Nick Maximov wins this fight 10 times. 10 out of 10 times. For the record, he won 30-27, clean across the board. It's at minus 500. And I maxed it out as many times as I could. And then when I looked, it was minus 650 is what it locked at. Like nothing. Meanwhile, I'm looking at this UFC card. Bo Nickel's a minus 1,500 favorite is what he went off at. I had him bet at minus 1,100. None of that's good. And it was a pretty close fight, man. He didn't look that good. Charles, I ended up going top ticket Charles. Damn near almost gets KO'd in the 5th. I didn't end up going with Ruffy, but if I had Ruffy on my top ticket, you don't think I would have been sweating a little bit? Like, yeah, he won. That kid's good, by the way. He proved a lot to me. But Lon Top gave him everything he had, dude. These Peruvian kids are for real. They want it. Those are tough fight. Nick Maximov, rinse and repeat, easy money takedowns, set up shop on this guy, spend 14 and a half minutes on top of him. That's the way, man. That's the way. So I'm looking at tickets with Jake Paul and Nick Maximov and a couple Angelo Pettis. Like all of a sudden it's John Jones and Bo Nickel. As a whole, it looks so much less daunting. On the PRP, I'm forced to put Damon Jackson on the second line. Why? Well, because there's really nobody else, to be honest with you, that I'm that confident. Not even confident in him. Just like there's a slight more confidence to him than a few of these other guys that may or may not win. He ends up looking awful. He retires after. C'est la vie. Shit happens. Can't predict that stuff beforehand, but it was a bad play. That was a classic Paul Shaughnessy shit. Took my action on that last week because I was so Jim Miller-like, dude. So Jim Miller-like. All the old guys got their ass kicked last weekend except for old man Jim with the Lyme disease. Still gets the thing done, dude. So, yeah, we got to talk about some more Chinese guys here coming up. But Jim Miller, what an absolute gem that guy is.
He keeps that Chevy, that old Chevy keeps on trucking, you know?
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just have to pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks also does Taco Tuesday every week, where you get discounts on projections up to 25% to help you win big. If you've got some hot takes on the NFL, why not take it up with your friends and win some real money this football season? On to MMA. If you're sick and tired of leaving things in the hand of the UFC judges like I am, Prize Picks is the place for you. Make picks on significant strikes landed, fight time, fantasy scores, takedowns, build up your lineup, all things that the judges have nothing to do with. Prize Picks has offerings for about every major sport that you could possibly think of, and you can win up to 100 times your money from just 4 picks. Download the app today and use code DOGORPASS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's DOGORPASS to get $50 after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
We got Muslim Salikhov taking on Song Kenan, minus 172 for Muslim Salikhov, plus 145 for Kenan. Who you got?
Yeah, listen, it's a scrap, and again, I can see both guys winning. Song Kenan, big volume guy, which I appreciate. Here's the one knock on him. Look at his 3 fights prior to his last one. So we'll go 4 fights back. He fights Max Griffin knocks him out. He fights Ian Gary. Ian Gary lands 127 significant strikes on him, puts him away by TKO in the 3rd round. So he comes from a first-round knockout against Max Griffin, but more so he absorbs the 127 against Gary, gets TKO'd in the 3rd. His next fight against Rolando Bedoya, which he did win, he got outlanded 112-75 against Rolando Bedoya. So another one of these South American guys, not great skill, but rugged and wants it, stands in front of you and just keeps throwing. He gets hit. Gary, you make an excuse. Gary's supposed to be talented. But now a guy that's quite literally just standing in front of you also has eclipsed the 100 significant strikes landed number. Then you look at Kevin Jousset. I had high hopes for Kevin Jousset, but the bottom line is he's not a good striker. Yeah, he's out of city kickboxing. Yeah, all of his training partners are great kickboxers. He's just not quite there yet on a personal level. Yet he proceeds to go out and land 134 to 62. Over double up, 134 significant strikes landed in its 3 consecutive fights. Gets knocked down the first round by Griffin, and then 3 consecutive fights where guys have landed 127, 112, and 134 on him. So defensively, this guy's up not good. He's taking way too many shots. And it's a bit of a catch-22. Muslim Salikhov has never landed 100 in his career. This ain't going to be the first time. It's that when you're getting hit that many times, it's because you're reckless and you're relying on your chin. And you do not want to be reckless with Muslim Salikhov. Yes, you're Chinese. You're fighting in China. Muslim Salikhov, known as the king of Kung Fu, has fought in China many times. He's a fan favorite down there. He's got a style that's so just wait on it. Spinning hook kick to the body. Like, he's got big explosive technique. The only way to cleanly beat him is to either out-grapple him, which I don't really see Song Kenan doing, or just to cleanly outwork him. I 100% know which one Song's going to try to do, but he could walk into a beating. Again, Griffin knocks him out in the first, and Griffin's more of a jab from range type guy. The 3 guys that eclipse the 100 on him, one of which knocks him dead. Sorry, Gary knocks him out. Jousset and Bedoya, I guess he never went down, but anyways, that's his run. Then he runs into Ricky Glenn. So we talked about it on the show that this guy's not defensively good, but Ricky Glenn, who retires after the fight, who's got a bad back, who's fought very sporadically over the last 5 years, who's moving up a weight class, actually 2, because he normally fights at 145. This is his 170 debut. He's so washed that Ricky was not going to do anything to Song that night. And yet Song pretty much didn't do anything to Ricky. Not like he blew him out of the water, Paul. It's not like he absolutely outclassed him. Ricky stood in front of him and offered up quite literally nothing, and Song Kenan still went the distance with him. So against Muslim Salikhov, he holds his ground quite well. So outworking him is going to require you to just walk right into the fire. I'm not perfectly sold on the idea that he will. Can see him winning. Minus 145 seems about appropriate, but I just wouldn't have a ton of confidence on it, to be real. So I'm going to take Muslim Salikhov, but quite honestly, that could be, I would call it the PRP pick, but some of these road to the UFC guys will probably be down there because I just don't care. But Salikhov, again, don't have a ton of faith in him. I just feel like he either edges this on a close decision because he landed the better shots, even though there was less of them, or he clips him at some point and takes him out. So, in any instance, whatever. Small play on Salikhov at best. Not a ton of confidence, but I'll take another underdog.
Yeah, Salikhov just really doesn't. Outside of what Nick Dalby got 86 significant strikes on him. Everyone else is like sub 40.
Can't hit the guy.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, he just kind of brings you into a fight that's a bit of a lull, and he lands the more significant strikes. He'll have, the Sultan of Spin. He'll land some like spinning technique, something flashy. That's like when you're so low volume rounds, just kind of, just slightly edges out, steals those rounds. He's a bunch of split decisions, or at least a couple split decisions over the course of his career. It's probably a close fight, but I'll go with the guy who's a little bit more defensively sound, even though he is like 40 years old now. He's older than me, which is not good if you're a fighter. I'm starting to learn that. Let's move on. We got Wang taking on Gabriella Fernandes. Wang minus 769 favorite. Fernandes could be at for plus 550. We know the story on Wang. Obviously, she was she kickboxed against Valentina Shevchenko. Came in to her UFC debut against Vicky Leons and did, what she was supposed to do. Absolutely just, knocked her out, just crushed her. Super minute and 2 seconds into the fight. Maybe one of the better prospects. She's priced as one of the better prospects. What I see from Gabriella Fernandes isn't much of a, traditional grappler or anything like that. So, seems hittable. Took 169 significant strikes against Carly Judas, a fight that a lot of people scored the other way. Taken down 3 times by Teresa Bleda, who is a grappler, and taken down 4 times by Jazz crazy enough, I remember she was like a favorite against Jazz in that spot, and that's only going back like just under 2 years now. Just kind of shows you how crazy the MMA markets can be sometimes. All in all, to say that if you're not a grappler and you're going to be going up against Wang Kong, I think you're going to get absolutely exposed. But the number at minus 769 is telling us that we have a heavy favorite here. So Wang Kong is the pick. Wang Kong by knockout, probably. But, yeah, that's where I'm at. What about you?
Yeah, listen, Wang Kong's supposed to be the real deal, and I think she's 32 years old now. So at some point, she needs to get a couple wins and then start fighting these better girls. But the UFC is doing this by design. She's a hot prospect. She's got a win over Shevchenko, which is a storyline you could definitely sell. She's got excellent striking credentials, and her grappling's most definitely starting to make some progress. She's like a minus 8 or 900 favorite over Victoria Leonardo, and then just makes her look exactly like that. A giant underdog just absolutely goes out there, smashes her in a minute. Say what you want about Victoria Leonardo, but she's taken some shots. She went 2 rounds with Mano Fiorot. She went 2 rounds until she broke her arm and they called it off. The doctor called it off between rounds against Melissa Gatto. After she lost to Kong Wang, she went back and beat Amanda Fernandez for Invicta FC. She's back in the win column, baby. To go out there and just absolutely torture in a minute shows that there are levels to this. So how do you approach it? You need to take her down. Why wouldn't the UFC book Wang Kong versus Jasmine Jasudavicius, right? They're both contenders. They're both trying to work their way up the ladder. It's a fight that makes sense because they're worried that someone like Jazz at this stage probably just takes her down and wrecks her. So they want to just build her a little more accordingly. This fight with Gabriella Fernandes is exactly that. It's just that next logical step. If you look at all of her fights, when she fought Jasmine, she got taken down 4 times. It's a young version of Jasmine on the Contender Series. Sorry, on her UFC debut, she got taken down 4 times. Her next fight against Teresa Bleda, she is big for the division, one-dimensional with her wrestling approach, but she gave up the 3 takedowns and also lost that fight. Her fight with Carly Judas, they gave up 2 takedowns each, but Judas is not known for her wrestling or her grappling, first of all. And second of all, lands 160 significant strikes, as you mentioned. The fight could have gone either way. Had she lost it, she's now 0-3. Her striking is not good enough to just hang on the feet with Wang Kong. And her wrestling, even though that's Wang Kong's weakness, I don't think it's good enough to just take her down consistently and hold her down. In fact, she's been the one getting out-muscled in a lot of these spots. Wang Kong's very good physically in the clinch. Like, not necessarily takedown defense, let's say, but when you tie up. And so if you try to push her up against the cage, she's going to get the better of the exchanges, knees to the body. If it's at range, she's going to clip you at some point. If you're just constantly trying to wear on her, again, it's in China. This is where she's comfortable. She's starting to make improvements. She's starting to develop. She's a minus 800 favorite. The UFC knows what they're doing. So, everybody Wang Kong tonight. I agree. Let's just keep the party rolling for until they put her up against a stiff competitor that can maybe offer some different problems. Till then, I don't see it. Gabrielle Fernandez, a logical next step to build up her MMA career, but she's just leaps and bounds not as good. And to be honest, do not be shocked if Wang Kong actually goes out and takes down Gabrielle Fernandez. You saw Wang Kong on her Contender Series. She gets a first-round submission, got the takedown, grabbed the guillotine choke. You see all of her fights prior to getting on the Contender Series. She's building up. There's an extreme focus on her grappling because they understand she's already got world championship potential kickboxing. So just let's focus on getting the other areas better. And this is going to be a great opportunity for her to demonstrate those new areas she's improved on because Fernandez doesn't have great takedown defense either. So 2 paths to victory. I see them both. Kong wins, big favorite. Women's MMA, so you can't put it on the top, but it's probably going to be on the second line, Paul.
All right. We got Carlos Ulberg taking on Volkan Oezdemir, minus 250 for Ulberg, plus 205 for Volkan. Who you got here?
Yeah, I've always been a bit of a Volkan hater. To me, he's just a first rounder bust guy. I mean, yeah, he's got big power. They call him no time for a reason because if you sleep on this guy, he's going to sleep you. But when he wins, it's like empathetic fashion, first round knockout. Maybe he knocks you to the ground. Maybe he grabs a quick round submission. He beats you. The longer these fights goes, he starts to find himself in a similar position that we talked about in other guys on the card. You're relying on that one big shot. He relies a little too much on just landing the power. Been knocked out a few times. That's going to happen at 205 when you're a striker. But for the most part, his durability's kept up. His gas tank, again, he doesn't throw a lot, so he can fight 3 rounds. But whenever he overexerts himself, whenever it's a dogfight, whenever he's got a guy like Nikita Krylov taking him down 7 times and forcing the issue, yeah, no, he's gassed out plenty of times. Starting to get a little bit older. Don't necessarily love it. Last two fights, he takes on guys at Bogdan Guskov, very green, not ready for this big jump into the UFC, taking on a guy that's fought for a world title. And then his next fight against Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker is just cooked to bits. He's no good anymore. He can't take a punch. Those are two favorable fights to put you back in the win column. But again, he's getting older. He's not getting any faster. He's a little bit flat-footed. There's a path to victory if you can take him down. There's a path to victory if you could just cleanly outwork him on the feet. You got to mind your P's and Q's and watch out for that big power. But, barring you're a chinny fighter like Johnny Walker, you should be okay. Looking at Carlos Ulberg, I think he presents all these same problems. You remember his UFC debut, big favorite, good looking guy. He's on like the New Zealand version of Bachelor or something like that. Like the guy's got everything going for him. And he proceeds to land 146 significant strikes in 3 minutes and 19 seconds. Fortunately, gasses himself out throwing and gets TKO'd by Canadian Jakku. Lost his UFC debut. His very next fight in the UFC against Fabio Cherant, and it's not a good fight. He wins the fight by decision. Only time he's gone to decision in the UFC or the Contender Series, and he just concerns himself too much against Fabio. One fight he blows his load. The second one he's too conservative. Since then, this guy's putting it all together. He comes from a kickboxing background. He didn't really have a ton of experience in MMA. Of course, you're worried about guys taking you down, but when he gets flowing with his kickboxing, he's a long-range guy. He's got big power. He's very precise. He gets to train with guys like Israel Adesanya all the time. His game is definitely coming around. After that lackluster win over Fabio Cherant, knocks out Tafon Njoku in the first round, and Tafon can take a hell of a shot, man. He's like a Cameroonian tank, man. Absolutely beast of a man. Nikolai Negumereanu has got literally nothing going for him other than he one tough dude. Tough Romanian guy, brings a lunchbox with him, sparks him in the first round. Io Pateria, no good, so he sparks him in 2 minutes and 9 seconds because that's what you do against guys that are not on your level. Da Wung Jung, I appreciate this fight. He shows a completely different element to his game. Doesn't need to just get that first round knockout. Because now you start wondering, well, maybe he's over relying on having to finish the guy early, or he'll gas again, like the Kennedy fight. This fight, he goes to the third round. His gas tank looks good. His submission grappling looks much improved. And he ends up getting a third round submission. Then you think, well, geez, maybe he's a grappler now. No, he goes out and he knocks out Alonzo Menafield in 12 seconds. I love it all. I love that he can strike. I love that he's got the power, but I love that he's adding those other elements to his game. Against Volkan Oezdemir, Volkan would have to pull cock him and knock him out, which is possible, but have we seen any signs from Carlos Ulberg that that's going to happen? No. Speed-wise, Ulberg's way faster than Volkan, so if Volkan's kind of trying to counter, I don't know that Ulberg's going to be there to counter. He's got good footwork. He's in and out. Going to be a problem. Volkan offensive wrestling, throw that off the table. I don't think he's taking Ulberg down. Ulberg offensive wrestling, yeah, interesting. Why not mix in a takedown or two? So again, he's another guy that you can see multiple ways to get the job done. We got a speed advantage. We got maybe a striking advantage. Got a grappling advantage potentially. Cardio advantage. I'm gonna guess so. Not a walk in the park type fight. You can't sleep on a guy like Volkan Oezdemir. But I think Ulberg could not be the next big thing, but a guy that's put into some big meaningful fights against the best guys of the division within his next few. Whereas Volkan's falling back to gatekeeper status. If you're a fraud like Johnny Walker, get out of here. If you're limited like Goskov or Bogdan Goskov, yeah, get out of here. If you're a legit contender, I still think that you get one over on Volkan, and I do expect Carlos Ulberg to go out there and do exactly that. So I got Ulberg. Ulberg, dare I say by decision, I kind of think he could knock him out. So I don't really like that. I'll probably just play the money line and tread lightly.
Yeah, I'd be careful about like the decision prop because that Ulberg,
yeah,
like him against Menafield, you're just like, okay, maybe they'll like mind their P's and Q's, and it was just an absolute Menafield runs across the caves to basically engage initially off the spot, and goes for the overhand right, tries to put him out of there, and then it was miss, and then he just got absolutely cracked. So it's easy to say like, oh yeah, this is the side that like this is how they should fight, and then they get in there and they're just like the whole game plan is entirely different. So who knows? He's got the power to knock him out. He could mind his P's and Q's, fight a little bit more at range, be a little bit crisp, don't get hit. That's the safer way to go about it. But if Volkan just pushes in, which I wouldn't be surprised, Volkan's kind of, if Volkan's just hanging out at range, getting like his leg chewed up, getting picked off with jabs and stuff, he may just force the issue and try to turn it into a dogfight. And That's the good thing about Ulberg, and I think it's actually good that he lost to Kennedy way back when, is that he learned, he was able to do that clearly on the regional scene to everybody. Just go in there, swing, don't worry, this guy's going to fall to the ground. And Kennedy didn't fall down. And
Kennedy's never been the same since. He ruined Kennedy. Kenny beat him. Kennedy's never been the same since.
But he humbled them.
Yes.
Humbled them, went back to the drawing board. And then, the Sharan fight, you saw somebody who was very, very focused on, I need to be able to go 15 minutes. Don't get hit the other guy, play this kind of safe. And then the knockout started materializing again against, I guess, Tafon isn't that bad, but like Nikolai and Ihor, he's been fighting some of the lower level of competition. Zhang is not so bad. They've been building him back up, and then now he's fighting. You say gatekeeper, it's like Volkan is the gatekeeper of the top of 205. And there's nothing wrong. People say gatekeeper as if it's like a bad thing. It's just like, no, it's like if you're not a top 10, top 15 guy, Volkan will expose you. And I think Ulberg, with the intangibles, the skills, the speed, the grappling is a question mark, but I don't know if Volkan's got that in his tool. Like, I think Volkan maybe can get a takedown early. But I just don't know if he can do it over the course of 15 minutes. Rinse, repeat, hold position, control, that type of thing. So I'm with you. I think Ulberg wins. Minus 250 seems a little bit risque, but I think he's got all the tools in the shed to make this work. We'll see about the grappling, but luckily, if that is still a question mark for him, Volkan doesn't. I know Volkan did go out there against Bogdan Guskov and got the submission win, but I don't know if it's really, not really in his bag of tricks historically. I guess against Paul Craig, he took him down, I believe, in round 3, just to hold position and stay out of trouble, essentially. I think Carlos Ulberg gets the job done as well. We got Zhang Mingyang versus Ozzy Diaz, minus 294 for Zhang. Diaz can be had for plus 240. Who you got?
This is just a quintessential dogger pass, man. Like, they're both not great. They're both just going to go out there and swing for the fences. Both of their win condition is first round knockout. What an absolute greasy banger of a fight. Ozzy Diaz, I rate his experience level and his wins higher than Zhang's, but for the line, it just looks like they just think this is a rollover for the Chinese fighter, and I don't necessarily see that happening. When I look at Zhang, he's someone that's been absolutely manufactured up. So he has, what's his losses here? He's got 6 pro losses. Of his 6 pro losses, he has been choked out twice in the first round, knocked out 3 times in the first round. So 5 of his 6 pro losses are inside the distance. He has been knocked out 3 times. He's been submitted twice. His grappling's no good. His striking defense, can't say it's great. He's a come forward type guy. But is there an avenue to beat this guy? Yeah, absolutely. Look at his wins, Paul. This is crazy. 0-1. This is his first win. 0-0. 0-0. 0-0. 0-0. 0-0. 9-11. 4-0. Oh shit, 4-0. Finally stepped up. Now that 4-0 guy that lost that fight to go to 4-1, then lost his next fight to go to 4-2, and then never fought again. Then he beats a 1-2, 8-5. That 8-5 guy lost his next 2 fights, and then never fought again 4 years ago. A 2-2 guy, a 5-8 guy, a 9-5 guy. My God. And look at this Hang Dong Kong. Click on his name, Paul. It looks like he's the missing Korean member of the Beatles, the 5th member. Like, where do you find these guys? And those are the guys with the winning records. Those are the winning records guys. The other guys are all these 0-0, 0-0, 0-1, 1-2. Never fight again. In fact, look at his losses, because I mentioned he got knocked out a bunch. He got knocked out by Askar Mazarov. People will remember that name because he fought one single time in the UFC against Alonzo Menefield, who we mentioned got knocked out in 12 seconds. He lost to a 13-10 Mazarov by first round knockout in a fight that happened in 2018.
And his record was completely fraudulent, right? That was the
Completely fraudulent. He was lying about it, right? He lost his fight prior to that by a second round TKO. This Luan Aguirre Elias, the guy's 0-0, and he chokes him out in the very first round. Only ever fought one more time after that and retired at 2-0, but he choked him out in the first round. So as of 2019 now, he's 8-5, and he's still losing to guys that are making their debut, but know some Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So not a good striker, not a good grappler, not a good fighter. But they just go back to the well with booking the not good guys. Some of them have okay looking records, but they're all the same bunch of putzes. And that's the exact reason that when he fought Tuco Tokos on the road to the UFC, he was a plus 450 underdog to Tuco Tokos. So you can watch the tape on him. You can see he's not good. You can see he's fought salty level of competition. But he's a big guy that's looking to swing hams. So he does clip Tuco Tokos and knocks him out in the first round. They sign him. He pulls out of a fight with Tyson Pedro. They rebook him against Bredson Robeo. It's an even money fight because they're both bum bangers that are just going to meet in the center and throw down. And he does get hit a few times himself, but he ultimately does put Ribeiro away. You know what you're going to get out of him. You're going to get a guy that's going to come center of the cage. He's going to plant his feet. He's going to start throwing. The chances of him getting knocked out are pretty well equally as good as the chance of him knocking you out. And so for that reason, to bet him as a 2-1 favorite, it's nonsensical. The fight with Tuco Tokos on road to the UFC, that was in June 2022. Okay, so it's 2.5 years ago. And then he fought one more time, which is Bredson Ribeiro, which was in February, and now he's fighting again. Is he making massive improvements? Maybe, but you can't see it because he's not competing all that much. He's not staying active. He hasn't shown some crazy new angle to his game. And yeah, you know he can go out there and bang, but he's not answered any of the questions about his grappling or his cardio or quite literally anything. So like he could be fighting pretty well anybody on the roster. And if this was the number that they gave you, you could pretty well just fade him against anybody. And Ozzy Diaz is kind of that guy. He's 33 years old, trains out of King's MMA. He's been around. He's been one of the best training partners to guys you've heard of, but he himself, you never heard of. He fought one time in the Contender Series a couple of years back against Joe Pyfer, lost that fight. Since then, he's floated around to the regional scene a little bit. But he's almost the exact same position. Like he's as an amateur, he went 6-2. Both of his losses, one by submission, one by knockout. And actually fought Dominic Reyes as an amateur. As a pro, he gets knocked out in 15 seconds by a 1-2 guy, and then lost to Joe Pyfer on the Contender Series by second round knockout. So as a pro, he's 9-2. Both of his losses are by knockout. Zhang's 17-6. 5 of his losses inside the distance. These guys do mirror image each other in that sense that they both have the same win condition. They're both a little bit sloppy. They're both a little bit volatile, but they got a bunch of power. And whereas I just cut down Yang's competition level, it's not the same with Diaz, man. He got some decent wins. Beat Andre Walker's okay, but he beat Logan Wood, who's 5-1 or 6-1 right now. Moses Murrieta, he's been around a long time, fought a lot of good guys. Bruno Assis, not great, but certainly not bad. Another one of these guys that's considered high-level regional show veteran type guy. Pyfer's doing well in the UFC. And then after he lost to him, his going back to the regional consisted of beating Chuck Campbell and Bevon Lewis. Chuck Campbell fought for Bellator. Bevon Lewis fought in the UFC. And he knocks them both out. Again, 2 fights for LFA against decent guys. Knocks both of these guys out. That is his win condition. He's fought 5 or 6 guys in his career that are decent. This is his UFC debut. Signed off those 2 wins for LFA. He's going to come in here guns a smoking, man. He's trained with way better guys. He's got more skin in the game. He's got 2 fights in 2024 alone, whereas Zhang's got 1 fight in the last 2.5 years. Yeah, maybe his timing is just a little bit better. Maybe he just connects a little bit quicker. Maybe he goes to the ground game because 9 career wins, 7 of them by knockout, 2 of them by rear naked choke. Zhang's submission losses by rear naked choke. That's so MMA mathy. Don't go with that one. But what I'm saying is Diaz is another one of these guys that could go out there, bang it out with him, prove to have better cardio, prove to have a little more power, prove to have a little more technique, maybe have a ground game to fall back on. UFC debut, nothing to lose as a 33-year-old man, trained with a high level for a long time. Total dogger pass, man. But I would take Ozzy Diaz.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with very much there. It just seems it's like an absolute car crash, and you're just hoping that, you know, the plus 240 comes through on your side there. Like Zhang Mingyang. I mean, yeah, his record, you go through a lot of those wins that he got the finishes over are just like absolute nobodies with like 0 record whatsoever. I guess knocking out Bredson Ribeiro in in a minute and 41 seconds.
Did you click on that Han Cong, that guy though? 2021, January 14th, 2021. Click on it. You have to click. Because that's one of the guys with the winning records, right? And that's one of the winning record guys.
Yeah,
so
and that
can only
guy's
imagine the salty level of competition he's hung with.
That guy went on to fight somebody named Damu Wu, who was 1-5 coming into it, and got guillotine choked in the first round.
Well, this Alafreza Filet, Huo, Ma,
that
Tian,
Damu Wu
Zhang,
guy,
Kong, none of them ever won a fight after losing to Zhang. None of them went on to win another fight. There's like 6 or 7 of them either retired or fought once or twice more and lost those fights. So it's a pattern. It's a fight building pattern. Those guys get exposed. Ozzy Diaz is from the street homes. That's the kind of guy you don't want to get in there with if you're not ready to go. So you're in on this one too. I like it.
And then that Damu Wu guy, I'm just going through Tapology, just seeing how ridiculous, his record is. But Damu Wu guy, after getting the first round guillotine choke against Han Kong, went on to lose 1, 2, 5 straight fights and retired.
Of course. Levels.
So, yeah, give me the guy who trains it with a good gym in California, gets good looks. I mean, it comes down to whose skull can take, whose skull can take a concussive blow that day in that moment. And maybe, just maybe, there are a couple submission wins on Ozzy Diaz's record. Maybe, just maybe, Ozzy Diaz is able to take this to the mat, and maybe he's got a big advantage down there. I don't know any of these things, but when I have so many question marks about a fight, you got to go with the big plus money. You may lose, but it's volatility personified. So I'm totally with you. Speaking of volatility personified, we've got the road to the UFC, and I am going to need your help, Cody. Not just with pronunciations, but with breaking down these fights. We got Suyoung taking on Baergeng Jieleyisi, -150 for you, plus 130 for Jieleyisi. See, I watched some tape on these people, and then you get down to sitting in front of the microphone and talking about it, and it all just kind of melds into one in your brain. Do you have a hot take on this fight, Cody? For the bantamweight,
I noticed the same thing, and I was like, this is obviously not. Is it ignorant or what is it? But it's the same. I have the same problem. Is that you look at it and you're like, okay, I got it. Then you look at the opponent and you're like, okay, I got it. Then you look at another opponent and you're like, was that the first opponent? Completely different guy, completely different weight class. Not even fighting this weekend. It was like, oh my God, what the hell's going on here? Complete rabbit hole. Sung Yu looks good for me, for my money's worth anyways. He was on the road to the Contender Series. He took on Shohei Nose. Shohei Nose is actually not bad. Someone that probably could have in the UFC. To go out there and get a win over him, not bad. He got 4 takedowns in that fight, landed 6 significant strikes throughout the course of the fight. So he's just very, very one-dimensional with his grappling, can get the takedowns, can secure positions, but there's not some huge X factor to his game. His next fight takes on this Zambuwashi guy. Much of the same. He gets 8 takedowns in that fight. He neutralizes them positionally, but he does get outstruck 49-47. So one judge gives it for his opponent, 2 judges give for him. He takes away the split. He's got a very grappling-oriented style. He's very risk-adverse. He's looking to just kill the space, keep this thing on the mat, not have a whole lot of transitions, not give you any space. He'll hunt for the odd submission, but he doesn't really have the ground and pound to open up the opportunities to snatch up an opportunistic submission. So what can you say? Baergeng Jieleyisi, much of the same. I don't know that he's completely ready, and he seems to me like he's a low volume guy. He's a little bit more reliant, same level of reliant, I guess, that they want to get these fights to the ground. His fight on road to ONE FC the first time around, it just stayed standing. Nobody got the takedown. He just gets outworked. He's not comfortable from that standing position. His next fight against Liu Lafang, he gets a rear naked choke, 2 takedowns, a little bit of ground and pound, grabs the neck. Next fight against Nakanishi, which is this is the finals fighting, so this would be the quarterfinals, the semifinals, sorry. The same thing. He got 3 takedowns. His opponent got 2 takedowns. He landed 24 significant strikes. His opponent lands 20. They're just like kind of closely contested grappling affairs. Neither guy has big power. There's no real threat of the knockout. Neither guy's got bad cardio. There's no threat of a guy just gassing out and getting outworked. It just seems to me like Sung Yu Wu Sung Woo Yu, is a little bit stronger, a little bit better in the clinch, a little bit better with his time on the mat. If you're going to trade takedowns with this guy, he's going to be a lot more effective with his time up on top control, as opposed to getting taken down, spending 2-3 minutes getting up. The way to beat him, because as I mentioned, he won his last fight on split decision. The one before that, he lands 6 significant strikes over the course of 15 minutes. The way to beat him is to outwork him and land him. But Baergeng Jieleyisi is a low volume guy as well. So yeah, if the judges are corrupt and they want the Chinese guy to win, then maybe he wins the split decision. But this thing's probably going to split decision. Going to be close either way. I will actually take the Korean fighter. I think he looks a little more refined, a little more polished. But they're both 28. I don't see a ton of upside here. So, yeah, sign me up for the Korean fighter, you, to get the job done.
Yeah, I didn't really see anybody on this season of Road to the UFC that I hold in the same regard as like some of the previous champions. Was the Japanese guy with the Olympic
Ryu
wrestling
Tsuruya? Oh, yeah, him.
with the what's his name again?
Yeah, not Nakashima. I should know this. See, we're getting so bad. Turning into Ken Carter. That guy's a beast,
We
though.
should know this, but
His dad's like the longtime Shudo matchmaker too, from like back in the late 90s. Like, it's a well-traveled family. Japan's actually starting to produce a lot better fighters these days. There was a lull there where it's like similar to what Canada's going through now. It's like, well, who's the next guy? But Japan's actually produced like 3 or 4 top-level guys right now. Kinoshita? Is it Kinoshita?
no.
That's what we're thinking about? Is it not? Anyways, now we're just down foolish. Main thing is Japan's producing guys, but we got a Chinese guy here versus a Korean guy. So none of that really matters. It's just proper matchmaking and is your scene developing. Korean MMA, you watch any of these Korean guys in the UFC, they've all got good grappling. All of them. They're solid grapplers, and then they do have a certain level of kickboxing element to them. Strong physically, you got to do mandatory military service in Korea. So again, it's like being fit and in shape is a way of life. I just, when you're going blind into the dark, I got guys that similar style, similar level of experience, probably going to decision, probably going to be a split. I lead towards Korea to win the matchup. So
Yeah, I could
is
see.
that ignorant? Yeah, maybe, but we'll see come Saturday night. Because if I'm right, I'm gonna be like, "What's up? What's up? I told you." If I'm wrong, yeah, Cody's a piece of shit. What can I do, Paul? People will say what they want.
Yeah, Rinya Nakamura.
Rinya Nakamura.
That's the guy who we're talking
Yeah, he's
about.
a problem.
Who's like the best prospect who's come off of this show, as far as I'm concerned. He's struggled to get the finish the last couple times out there, but like his wrestling is so good and he's so explosive with his strikes that it's like if you can just at bantamweight, the guy seems like an absolute problem. Especially if the hands start to catch up with the rest of his game. He's going to be a tough out for anybody. But he hasn't fought since February, so we're getting close to a year since the last time he's been out there.
Well, they also at flyweight, they also got that Ray Tsurura guy, and I probably pronouncing his last name wrong, but yeah, he's a stud. And then obviously Tetsuro Taira is a stud at 125. So it's like they're producing very, very high level grapplers. Are any of these guys great wrestlers? No. Are any of these guys great strikers? No. But their grappling is top notch. And when you have that one-dimensional skill set, it's all about getting favorable matchups. That's what makes this one tough. Is they're not neither guy are high level grapplers, but they're both grapplers, so it might offset itself a little bit.
I would argue that Rinya Nakamura is an excellent wrestler.
Oh yeah, no,
considering he went to the Olympics for it.
And he's actually got tons of power as well. Like
Yeah.
he's not just going to take you down and hold you down. He can submit you. He can crank your neck off, but at the same time, he can knock you out. So he grew up in the game. I think when you look at a lot of the other prospects, none of them wrestled. Well, his dad, who knew from doing Shudo in 97 that, oh, whoa, wrestling's the way to win fights. Yeah, he put this kid in wrestling from the onset. He wrestled in like elementary school, high school, college. I think he's got a little bit of like the world level, like international level wrestling. And then at that point, it's like, okay, now let's start fighting. So you're fresh. You haven't taken the concussive blows. You haven't been Sage Northcutt fighting since you're 16, but you've got a winning skill set, a base already set, and they're not rushing them. They're taking smart fights and taking their time on them. So Japan will end up having a world champion. Have they ever had a? They've never had a world champion in the UFC, right? Yeah, they've never had one. Kao Uno fought to a draw versus BJ Penn the first time in a title fight, but that's it. I could see one of these kids stepping up in the next, 3 to 5 years because they're doing something right.
Yeah, but you are the noted hater of of
Yeah, of Tyra. You're gonna say
Tyra.
Tyra. Well,
Yeah.
right, but I'm also the noted hater of Muhammad Makayev, and ain't nobody watching him fight looking at me being like, "Bro, I told you this guy was legit." It's like, nah, obviously he's there to get exposed. It's like the group of guys that I've chosen to be the ones to expose him, not good, not good. So Tyra's good and Makayev's good. It's that when you're 21 years old, when you're 22 years old, someone's gonna be able to go and hand you that L and humble you, and you're gonna get so much better from it. Like a Carlos Ulberg, you lose, and then you get infinitely better, more wiser from that losing experience. So yeah, you always want to be the first guy to go out there and beat the kid. You want to fade the kid a little bit. Tyra's there to get faded. Makayev's there to get faded. The thing is that the longer they just keep doing this, all of a sudden he's not some 21, 22-year-old kid. All of a sudden they're 24 and 25 and 26 and 27. Don't even hit the prime until 29 to 31. How problematic is the guy going to be at that point if his body holds up? Big problem, big problem. So you hate on them, not like this guy's not good. It's that this guy's not fully evolved yet. Like if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, like this is not his final form. Like this guy's going to evolve a few times. Then he's going to be a real problem. Is that can we bet on him to lose while he's still in his infancy and is still there to learn a few lessons? Yes, but it doesn't always work out.
Yep. The only stain on you that I would say in this fight that we had previously broken down until we start talking about other guys, because obviously we're not so interested in these fights. I did watch him against Dastan Amangeldi, who's like a Kazakh fighter, 7-1. And that was a fight where like you was struggling to get the takedowns and just got pressured, walked down, and then eventually finished. So the good thing for him against Jieleyisi is that I don't think that same pressure, boxing, and ability to turn it into like a pressure boxing fight is really there for Jieleyisi.
I'll just counter with this small one for Jiu-Jitsu, which is a great nickname, by the way, is that when you talk about salty record guys, and a lot of these Chinese fighters have built up the record, yeah, like Yu's come from a tougher South Korean regional scene that turns out tough guys. His fights, meanwhile, right off the onset, second career fight, 3-1, 6-4, 1-0. First career loss, UAE Warriors, one of the bigger promotions in the Middle East, where he fights an 11-0 guy, loses to him. Kamidov's a hell of a fighter, loses a decision to him. And then, 2 fights later, he's now fought a 12-4 guy in Kazakhstan. He goes to Kazakhstan, takes on the 12-4 champion, wins the belt, defends it against GC Lee. Sorry, doesn't defend it. Goes, wins up some other belt. Has a no contest. Goes to deep, where he wins the deep title against an opponent that's 25-1, and then goes back to Kazakhstan, where he loses the fight you mentioned against a tough Kazakh 6-1 prospect that was able to stuff his best. From there, he has a no contest with an 11-2 fighter in the 4th round of a championship fight, and then beats 12-4 Shohei Nose and 9-1 Dirmasil Duwapsi. He's pretty much taken no easy fights. A lot of these fights are championship fights, booked as 5 rounds, taking on guys that have 9-1, 10-1, 11-1 records. Sometimes win, sometimes lose, but give a good account of himself. So when you've got limited ability to go off stuff, you just got to go by body of work and mentality and who wants to take these tough fights and take them. It's no knock to his opponent saying his opponent's taking any type of easy fights, but Xavier Aloui for UAE Warriors. Xavier Aloui is a Canadian fighter from Quebec. Very familiar with him, for the record. He wins a split decision over him. He fought this Shuya Kabakubo, lost a split decision to him. Beats this 8-14 Mongolian, and then gets on the road to UFC. So none of it means anything. It's that if you don't have the real time to fine tooth comb, watch all the tape in the world, I'm not mailing it in, I'm not wiki capping it, it's nothing like that. It's that one guy has shown you that he's probably more refined. He's 28 and he's fought a bunch of good guys. He's coming into his own. The other guy's 28, and his last 2 fights were the 2 biggest fights of his career. So he's still in that learning progress of learning on the job, whereas the other kid, just I think a little bit further along. We'll rifle through a couple of these other ones just to get us back on track. What's the next one you got on the board? Kiru Sahota versus Donghun Choi?
Choi versus Sahota. Who you got?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
Honestly, Sahota was one of
pick 'em,
yeah,
basically.
it's a pick 'em. His money's been swinging on it though.
Oh no, yeah.
Yeah, it's close to pick 'em.
Yeah,
it's close to. Yeah, I'll give you my piece with Sahota, right? So Sahota is one of these guys where he is Chinese, but he's probably born in China, grew up in Manchester, so he's getting a lot of different looks in the gym. Someone that's going to be a little more along the line. Again, is he born in England or China? Born in England. Born in England, likely to Chinese parents, has a citizenship going over there. I believe he's still representing Southeast Asia to a certain extent, but he's someone that's at least been able to grow a little bit on the European and the UK scene, which is a little more refined at this stage. When you look at his losses, not necessarily bad guys. And as an amateur, he threw up tons of fights. 12-8 as an amateur. Of those amateur losses, only been finished, I think, once or twice by a rear naked choke. Showed a bunch of durability, 20 amateur fights, turns pro, losses as a pro. Scott Malone, 7-4, not good, not bad. And then this Sean Marcos de Silva, Brazilian fighter, ends up knocking him out. Outside of that, it's like, again, he's another guy that's been testing himself coming along. What I like about him is that he's 5'10" at 125 pounds. So he's, I wouldn't say he's the tallest guy in the division, but he's going to be up there amongst the tallest guys in the division. He's always going to have a reach advantage over his opponents. He's, had some decent looks as an amateur and as a pro. I would say that he's a little more of my kind of guy, a little more refined. The issue is that he is, because you're tall, guys are going to be able to kind of drop below, take you down, control you a little bit. On his first fight on road to UFC, he got taken down 9 times. He did get back up. He did land the better strikes. He squeaked out a split decision. I mean, he got taken down 9 times. It wasn't the best look. The advantage thing about being 5'10" at the weight class is you do have the range and you do have that frame. The disadvantage there is that the high center of gravity, like these guys are just going to be able to walk through the pocket if you don't use your range properly, get a hold of you, drop under, suck your legs out from underneath. All of a sudden you're on the mat and it's hard to get back up because when you've got the long limbs, hard to create space. Space is required to, have that explosive movement, create space, get back up to your feet. So could be a little bit problematic. And then that next fight against Ruel Pinellas, I thought he did a better job, stuffed a lot of the takedowns. Grappling looks like it is improving. He's starting to come along, but, still a work in progress. This Donghun Choi, again, he's a Korean fighter, and I do rate them. They got an excellent program over there. They're all physically in excellent shape. He's got good grappling credentials. You look at his 2 fights, one of them, he gets the takedown, lowish volume. He wins a split decision. Second one, Angot Bishi, he gets taken down twice, but he does score the knockdown. Close fight. He wins the split decision. Both of his road to the UFC fights are by split decision. Overall, he is undefeated 8-0 as a pro, but I'm not overly impressed with his body of work. The 2 split decisions suggest that he does have durability, does have cardio, and this thing's probably going to go to decision. It's that can Sahota use that range, use that height, use that ability to keep standing for the most part and then outwork this guy. And I'm not completely sold that he does. So to me, it's a total dog or pass. And for that reason, I will take Sahota, but I think you get the vibe I'm throwing out here where it's like not something I'm very concerned about, not something I'm very confident in, not something I'm looking to add to all my tickets. Could see it going either way. It is a dog or pass situation. It's lined fairly close for a reason, but give me the plus money if anything.
Yeah, I mean he was a dog until like 3 days ago, basically, and that's when some action came in on Sahota. Sahota made it a straight pick'em type of fight. You make a lot of good points in terms of like the reach and everything, but Sahota gave up a ton of takedowns. I mean, those roads to the UFC, like whoever's keeping track of like the
that's true. That's true.
The stats are like outrageous on some of these too, right? Like, did he actually get taken down 9 times? It's like whoever's the person with the clicker for takedown, keeping track of takedowns in these fights is like incredibly generous. Like any sort of mat return seems to be giving them, because you just notice when you go through like UFC stats that a lot of these takedowns are a lot of these takedown numbers are just like really, really high compared to what you're used to seeing. I'll go with Choi, but pretty much no confidence there whatsoever. Then we got Feng Xiaocan taking on Ming. Minus 312 for Feng, plus 250 for Ming. Ming. Here's where I struggle with this, Cody. Your girl Feng. I don't know if you're gonna.
Liang? Are you gonna bring this up?
When you put a minus 312 next to somebody that got submitted in the first, I know now Liang, her best work is in the first round, but like let's face that WLF wars, there haven't been that many great fighters that have come out of that promotion over the history of time. And
true.
Na
This
Liang
is
went
true.
out there, submitted her by armbar 4 years ago. Just went out there, absolutely did what Na Liang did until she came to the UFC, and literally it worked on absolutely nobody. Maybe she had a little bit of success with just aggressive grappling early on, but I don't know. You put a minus 312 price tag against someone who got subbed by Na Liang in the first round. I start looking for reasons to bet the other side. CF dot model, 100%. I've looked through the other, and like the other girl, Ming. Nothing about it's very pretty, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think I could have any faith in Feng to like be adding her to parlays and be all about that life. So I'm enacting the CF dot model here. What about you?
Yeah, I'm not going to, but I wouldn't blame you for it. Minus 300 seems like it's a little bit too steep, and yeah, what real angle is there to have on it? But I still think Feng gets the job done. Feng's first fight on the road to the UFC, yeah, it's the biggest layup of all times against what's her name, Kyra Sai. Oh my god, why would you even put that person in a steel cage to fight a human being? What are you thinking? So she smashes her, easy first round victory. And against Mickey Motono, she gave a couple takedowns, but her get-up game looked pretty solid. She's a good striker, has some decent volume. What I will say to your Na Liang thing is you're not wrong. You're not wrong. You're dealing with low level and then minus 300 with low level. How could you like it? But what I will say is that she comes from like a Sanda Wushu background, has some kickboxing, was just a kickboxer. She fought Na Liang, as you mentioned, 4 years ago, but she's only 22 years old right now. So she fought Na Liang when she's 18 years old and got armbarred in the first round. She's a kickboxer who's 18, got subbed by a girl that eventually went to the UFC, went 1-4 in the UFC, I believe. And in all of her 4 losses, actually had a decent first 2 minutes, just fades off after that. Decent first round, really. Anyways, it's all experience. You lose as an 18-year-old. Who cares? I'm not going to fault you. 4 years later, you've learned, you've gotten better. She shows some decent wins on the regional scene, but as you mentioned, WLF, it's hard to get a range of. You can say, oh, they beat this 12-4 Ukrainian fighter. That doesn't mean anything. Quite literally means nothing. Who's that guy? Who did he fight? Where did he build his record? What are his victories? So I'm picking up what you're putting down on that one. But when I seen her on the last fight on the road to UFC, again, she looks physically pretty fit. 22, coming into her own, strong, was able to get back up. Not bad. Ming, meanwhile, uh, Ming's 30, right? So she's 8 years older. This is the version of her that you're going to get. As of like 2018, she's winning split decisions over 0-1 fighters. Vast majority of her fights go to decision, like a whole bunch of them. In fact, mostly they're always competitive. When she came on the road to UFC for her first fight, she's an underdog. That second fight where she took a split off Dong, she's a plus 260 underdog. Not supposed to win. Goes out there. Not a good fight. I can't say I watched the whole thing. It was mostly just like, let's skip through. But from the skipping through that I did see, she does give up multiple takedowns. She does get controlled on the ground. She has a higher work rate standing. Against Feng, I don't think that she's going to be able to threaten with the wrestling. Like Feng, yeah, you can take her down. That would be the best path. Don't stand and kickbox with her. That's her base. That's her skill set. I think probably Ming will probably do that. You got a 30-year-old versus a 22-year-old. Yeah, the more mature fighter is a lot further along. But what you got is one girl that's taken all this time to get to a UFC contract opportunity, whereas the other girl's been fighting professionally since she's 17. She's built up a nice little record. She's coming off 2 dominant enough victories in the road to the UFC. She was not an underdog in her last fight. They have a little bit of faith in her, and now they're writing her as a 3-1 favorite. Local fighter-ish, ish. Macau's probably so far from where she lives, but you know what I'm saying. Minus 300, dude, women's MMA. I get all of that, but I don't just force random underdogs simply because they're plus money. I got to like believe it in my heart. And this one, I just don't believe it enough. So I will pass altogether to save us both the heartache.
All right.
I would not take a shoey bet on this. Absolutely not. But I am going to take the 3-1 favorite.
Okay, we got Carlos Hernandez taking on the Alphabet. Carlos Hernandez, a minus 185 favorite. The Alphabet can be had for plus 155. Can you pronounce this name, Cody? I've tried. Nyam Jargal Tumendembero. I'm just calling them the Alphabet moving forward. I've watched a little bit of his tape there. Seems very like the classic Mongolian style, which is just like pure action. Throwing hell to the wind, just going after it, and just throwing haymakers. I don't know if it's very technical. Obviously, he's undefeated at this point. Carlos Hernandez seems to be almost kind of a guy that they're using for these types of spots. A person from this region of the globe. Give them I guess it's kind of like give them the entry level UFC guy who's doesn't really have too many holes in any aspect of his game, but isn't elite in any aspect of his game either. I'm hard pressed not to trust what I know, and that's Carlos Hernandez, half decent at jiu-jitsu. Solid chin, solid grappling. He's not the greatest. Yeah, takedown defense can be exploited against guys that are at a higher level, but I don't see that from the alphabet here. I see some action coming in on Naim Jargol or whatever, but it doesn't seem like a dog that I'd be willing to take. I kind of look at this fight being kind of similar to like Dennis Bondar, where he had another like all action type of fighter who can land some big shots and stuff, but Carlos Hernandez frankly should have got the finish late the last couple seconds there of the fight. They ended up calling it they called it a technical decision based on how he landed or whatever. It was complete nonsense. But Hernandez kind of handled him there, and that's what I feel like is going to happen here. What's your take?
Yeah, I actually got Carlos Hernandez as well. Niam Jagral could probably be good. He's probably going to develop a little bit, but yeah, you're 8-0. You haven't really been tested. You're jumping up onto the grand scene versus somebody that's been an excellent prospect tester. If you were a legitimate prospect like Tatsuya Taira or Ray Tsuruya, yeah, then you'd beat Carlos Hernandez. If you're not legit, if you're not up to snuff, if you're not a top level grappler, then Carlos Hernandez is essentially falling into a gatekeeper role, but he's going to guard that gate. He's going to do a damn good job of it. When I look at Niam Jagal, again, he in Mongolia, very physically fit. He just bombs on these guys and he knocks them out. He does show a couple wins where naked choke armbar. It's mostly when he overwhelms his opponents, they'll fall to the floor. He'll get on top. They'll give him something almost as a mercy. He generally does finish his guys early, but I don't think that there's some obvious cardio issue. What I do take concern with is this Top Noi Kerwam split decision in the first round of Road to the UFC. So a couple things here is that this was not the recent season of Contender Series, of Road to the UFC. It was the 2023 version where he won against Top Noi Kerwam in the first round, beat this Petr Denisos in the second round. Then he did not end up fighting in the final. He got booked to fight Andre Lima. He pulled out of that fight. Now he's getting booked against Carlos Hernandez, has not fought in a year. He's not old. I'm sure he's making improvements, but now he's been on the shelf for like a year and a half, pulled out of his last fight due to presumably some type of injury, and you got to go back to 2023 to see those wins. Why I say the Top Noi Kerwan fight, the split decision, is of note to me is that Top Noi is the only other fighter, active, not Sakuraba or Joe Schilling. He's like the only other active fighter I could name you fighting in the UFC that smokes cigs. Like he's a Thai guy that smokes a pack of cigs a day and it really can't grapple. He's known for his Muay Thai. They're trying to teach him some grappling. He can't grapple. He goes out there and took him down 6 times and outlanded him 51-47 and lost a split decision in a really competitive fight. His next fight, he got a quick little takedown. He's able to submit a lesser foe in Petr Denisos. But I go back to that Top Noi fight, man. It went 15 minutes. You were fighting a Thai smoker who grappling was like his third best skill set, and he stretched you to the limit and took you down 6 times and outlanded you. Yeah, that's not good. So Carlos Hernandez, meanwhile, why he's the prospect checker is look at these losses. He loses to Alan Nascimento. You mean third-degree BJJ black belt, Alan Nascimento? Okay, all right, tough fight. Won't hold that one against you. He gets TKO'd by Tatsuya Taira in a fight that, he survived all the bad positions in the first. Looked like he was going to start coming around. Gets melted by a top 5, top 10 legit prospect in the division. They book him against Ray Tsuruya. He's a huge underdog in the fight. He survived all those bad grappling positions. Actually gave a good account of himself. he's tough, man. He can survive. You can take him down. He'll scramble back up. He's got good cardio. He's got good diversity with his striking. He'll throw low kicks. He'll throw, punches from both sides, moves his foot decently. And the guys like Daniel Barras. Daniel Barras is actually pretty decent, but close fight. Hernandez is able to beat him because he's the better guy. Victor Altamirano, very close fight. 2 back-to-back split decisions, but Hernandez is able to handle those guys. They're not bad. It's that if you want to prove that you're legit, you go through Hernandez. Dennis Bonder. Bonder's not legit. Has a good-looking record. Not a very good fighter. What happens when he runs through a guy like Carlos Hernandez? He's going to run into his match. So I think he's an excellent barometer test. As far as I'm concerned, he's got the striking advantage. He's a lot cleaner. He's a lot crisper. He could potentially get knocked out. Like, he got knocked out by Tatsuya Taira, which is not a great look. But in that fight, I think he's so conscious about the takedown coming, fights with his hands low, stuffs a few takedowns, grows in confidence, gets caught with a clean counter shot. His chin's going to have to check up in this spot. But if it does, he should have the superior volume, the superior work rate, the superior shot selection, mix in a few takedowns along the way. This is someone that's paid his dues, great guy in the gym, fighting all the best guys that are made available to him. Those guys eventually turn the corner when they're given easier matchups. If this fight was taking place in Las Vegas, Hernandez is a -3 3-1 favorite over this guy. Easy. It's because it's in Macau. It's because maybe they're trying to promote some of these Asian fighters. It's because he's got a fight at 3 a.m. His local time is now, well, I guess he'd be fighting towards like 5:30 in the morning. It's not natural. He has to travel all the way there. He's jet lagged. Those are the little things that make you say, okay, yes, it's not 3-1 favorite. Hernandez, it's -180. I get it. But even for that price tag, I think Hernandez finds a way to get the job done. I like this kid. He doesn't show a pretty looking record, but he's got skills, very serviceable, and I got a feeling he'll put it all together on Saturday.
All right, we got Lonir Kavanaugh taking on Jose Ochoa, -357 for Lonir Kavanaugh, +285 for Ochoa. Who you got here?
Yeah, this is this week's version of Ruffy versus Lawn Top from last week. It's basically the same thing as far as I'm concerned. The Loner Kavanaugh is the real deal. And whereas I did fade Ruffy, you're right, Paul Shaughnessy. Ruffy was a 9-1 favorite, so there was a little more meat on the bone to just go contrarian on that one. The reason we took Lawn Top is Peruvian guy, super tough, good cardio, wants to make it a striking affair, wants to keep it a striking affair, and will give you a good account of himself. He was able to push him. Ruffy wins, but he's able to push him. We're getting the same thing here, too. This Loner Kavanaugh, he's the real deal. I say that 25-year-old kid, technically another one of these guys that he's born in, is it China? I think he's born in China, but grows up in England. Might have been born in England. I don't know. He's representing China, but grows up in England. Gets a lot of good looks down there, a lot of good training. As an amateur, again, doesn't really show all that much, fought some good guys, but as a pro, he's just very dynamic, excellent athlete, excellent punch selection, moving up. They can't find fights for him. I've seen this guy's name pop up on a zillion matchmaking lists of, do you want a free trip to the UK to get handled by Loner Kavanaugh? And it's like, nobody's taking it. His win, David Scarano, 4-0, knocks him out. The Sean Marcos da Silva. Sean Marcos da Silva is actually pretty good. He's 6-1 German fighter, and he has a win over Geraldo Fanny, who's Contender Series guy, and he's got a win over who we talked about earlier. Doesn't matter. He's got some quality victories, right? He's not losing. He's not fighting terrible guys. He's beating them. It's this Antoine Ho on the Contender Series. Antoine Ho's at an MMA lab in Arizona. He's a young kid as well. I consider this guy an ultra prospect. I think he is the absolute real deal. He can do it all. He's got very good striking, excellent grappling, excellent timing, excellent selection, great athlete. He can do it all. Ho will challenge for a UFC title at some point. The kid is the real deal. When they matched him up versus Kavanaugh, I thought this is terrible matchmaking. That Kavanaugh is supposed to be a legit prospect. Ho most definitely is a legit prospect. Why would you have two guys that they're both very young fighting for $5,000 in front of Dana for a UFC contract? Just sign them both and let these guys grow, and they're both going to be problems. No, they run it on the Contender Series, and you'll see them fight again in the future. But I was big on Ho. And Kavanaugh, oh my God, dude, the KO still lingers in the back of my mind. He's just such a smooth operator that if you stand in the pocket with him too long and you don't mind your P's and Q's, you're going to get pinched. When he hits you, he hurts you. His cardio is a flyweight. He can go for days. Young kid, confident, good looking, highly marketable. He should be the Ruffy versus Law on top of this week, but instead of paying 9-1 on him, he's like 3-1. I really don't mind it. Jose Ochoa didn't have to go through the Contender Series. What ended up happening was he had a fight with Jack Duffy. He pulls out of that fight. They say, okay, we'll book you back. They don't book him back. Now they need somebody with their hand up to come get slaughtered. Didn't have to take the route. His wins, for the most part, had just been local guys in South America for local regional promotions, not the stiffest level of competition. He's not making a whole lot of money. A career best payday for him would be about $300 American. The Contender Series says, we'll bring you in. He pulls out of the fight. That's got to be devastating. That's got to be heartbreaking. He's now not fought in almost exactly 1 year. That's no income coming in. He's only just a kid, 23 years old, and he's at a shoot to box Diego Lima in Peru. Now, he's going to come forward and he's going to swing. And Kavanagh, not the guy that's going to work against. So as much as he's going to have good cardio and he's going to be tough by way of him having Peruvian blood going through his veins, when you're taking on an excellent matador, being a bull is just not good enough, right? So I got Kavanagh. Kavanagh's probably on my top ticket if we're being real. I think he smokes him.
Wow. So that answers the question. I think I saw somebody write that. It's like, has Cody ever seen a Peruvian kid that he didn't like?
Oh, yeah, probably not.
It seems like this is the moment. This is the moment. First time I think because like you have, I guess, yeah, like I'm trying to think of like so many Peruvian fighters, and you pretty much just like love all of them.
Okay, I'll tell you something. I've developed this over my 10 years of matchmaking, and more so than matchmaking. Let me just bring it up. Okay, so you think right off the get-go, like all fights are made even, but they're not, because a lot of times there's no footage on a guy. So you start basing it on where are they from. And you and I are both notorious for it. There's a Mexican guy fighting. We'll be like, oh, can't get knocked out, shouldn't get knocked out, or it would be very hard to knock him out. And we say it every time. And you know what? It proves to be right 95% of the time, Paul Shaughnessy. These guys take a frying pan to the face and they don't go down. Something that's in them. When you know you're fighting a Russian fighter, presumably the guy can wrestle. They can't all wrestle necessarily, but presumably this guy's going to be very strong. He's going to be very rugged. He's a Russian fighter. You know, a fighter from Nigeria, he's going to be twice the athlete you are, twice the explosiveness, twice the speed, likely twice the power. Might not have the finest technique, but as an athlete, they bring a different element. Canada, we're kind of stuck in a rut. We don't really have like these high-level athletes like the US produces. We don't have the highest level of kickboxers like Europe produces. We're not a country like Iran that can specialize in something like wrestling and just be. We're generalists. We're generally good striking, generally high-level jiu-jitsu, generally good Muay Thai. It'll get better, but Canada as a whole has a bit of a broken system right now, and it's going to need some refining. It's going to need some, some time and some work. Without being racist, this is going to sound racist, it's not racist. If they said the guys from India or Pakistan or Singapore or most of Europe's actually got good fighters. Afghanistan's got really good fighters. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of countries, but there's a few countries they don't produce anybody. There's none. You can't look at it and say, "Oh yeah, look, they've had a guy fight in the UFC before." Never happened before. Never happened. If the UFC does sign a guy, it's on like a one fight contract basis. They get smoked. You never see from them again. It's not anything wrong with the people. It's a program. These USSR satellite states, they're making these guys do the work, right? So it's ingrained in them. The work and sport is ingrained in you. They use sport for politics. So if you want to get into politics, you probably got to go through sport. And as a result, it's like you're better off for it. The number one amateur boxing program in the world, Ukraine, okay? Former USSR satellite state. The number 2 boxing program, amateur boxing in the world, is Cuba, former USSR satellite state. The number 3 is Uzbekistan. It's all the same thing, dude. It's the same thing that's ingrained to you, taught in repetition over and over and over again. And then even in the US, it's not every American fighter is the same, right? If they tell you this guy's from Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, don't take the fight, man. Don't. Arizona, large parts of California, although they got a lot of bad fighters there, but for the most part, Colorado, you don't want to fight those guys. If they offer you a guy from Vermont or Maine or upstate New York, parts of Michigan, Utah, no disrespect to anybody from those places that are talking the show. It's just that the scene isn't developed yet. It will be someday, just it's not developed yet. So Peruvians, they have no infrastructure. There's no money there, okay? They don't have training facilities that are top notch. They don't have a world champion kickboxing coach. They don't have a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt from Brazil. Oh, they might, but not accredited one. They don't have some guy that wrestled in the Olympics. They have quite literally nothing at their disposal other than one hell of a will. And the whole place is at altitude. So they all got cardio and will. And if you cannot fight, what are the two things that could lead you to win a fight? Is cardio and will. So yeah, you just being able to absorb the guy's best shot. You seen Lawn Top, dude, his eyes swollen shut. He gets dropped in the second round. He just gets back up. Ruffy's dancing around. He's landing at will. And even Ruffy's looking into the side like, oh my God, what's up with this guy? He's a zombie. They used to call him Korean zombie. These Peruvian guys are zombies. These Mexican guys are zombies. It might look like a lopsided record. This guy's 6-9. You're in for the fight of your career, kid. So just watch out when you accept fights from them. I got a buddy, loves to travel. Goes to Honduras, easy money win. Goes to Jamaica, easy money win. Goes to Panama, easy money win. Yeah, he went to Peru, bad idea. And I told him that. Do not go to Peru and try to fight some kid who's 3-2 and looks salty, man. Oh, he wants it so much more than you. And you lose those fights, right? So not everything's as easy as you're from here, you're from there, but it's part of it. What's your upbringing? How much trauma have you suffered? How bad do you want it? Because you got to want it pretty goddamn bad to go out there and outwill somebody who wants it equally as bad as you. So when we talk about levels of skills, yeah, there's levels to mentality as well. When they just throw all this fluff, Contender Series guy, 6-1, 5-2, Chinese guy that's 17-6 has built it up on the back of bums. How good are they? They're not tested. You don't know. You're going to have to just take a shot in the dark. These other countries, they know. They're tested. They're ready to come. They take the hard fights. They lose, they get better. So has Cody Savnik ever seen a Peruvian fighter that he didn't like?
Seems like it.
Yeah,
now.
I couldn't name. I know I couldn't name you one off the top of my head. Edson or Barzola, Enrique Barzola fights for Bellator now. I know, dude. How could you not? He had cardio for days. He's the biggest 135 pounder that's ever fought ever. It's a massive 145er now. Chin like a piece of granite. And no, he is not the best fighter going, but he will fight with every ounce of his being. I love Enrique Barzola. How could I not? You don't see a ton of Peruvian fighters. The ones that you do see, they're okay. Even the bad ones, bottom of the barrel, James Longtop, you don't like him. This kid, you don't like him. Even those guys will go and earn a fight of the night by slugging and giving everything back to a guy like Ruffy, who's a top prospect. He went 3 rounds. He looked good. I'll give him all of his dues. The questions I had about him, he answered, but I don't think Long Top made me look bad. And certainly I didn't feel bad. I knew that guy went out there and gave it his damnedest. And that's all I can ever ask. I lose a lot of fights on guys that quit on themselves. You might not be able to catch it in live time, but you can see the tides turning. You know how many times you win the first round? They blow the whistle, and going into the second, I am screwed. But you just won the first round. But you can tell the tide is turning. You can tell. You can see it in real time. Yeah, those guys that are just like, oh man, I'm tired. Okay, time to buck down and throw combinations. That's something you can't teach. And when you find it, it's rare. When you get guys from Peru, man, they all seem to do it. So he'll give a hell of an account for himself. But Loner Kavanaugh is a problem. So I'll definitely will take the favorite there.
Yeah, so the Jose Ochoa guys, like his striking defense seems like a big question mark from the tape that
like Rolando Bedoya. He's the same way. You can punch him in the face all you want. He ain't gonna return fire. Lawn Top, he ain't gonna return fire. Mm-hmm. These kids, they're built from the same mold.
So that would be my only concern for like laying a big number on Kavanaugh. I think his footwork, his delivery of his powerful strikes are like, it's not even remotely competitive, but this Ochoa kid could just make it greasy enough that you got your butt puckered, laying the chalk on Kavanaugh, and then I guess Kavanaugh does most of his training over in Thailand, so he should be acclimatized to his to the time zone and everything like that.
If Ochoa was fighting the guy that Kavanaugh melted in 2.5 minutes on the Contender Series, Antoine Ho would wreck him. I think Ho would wreck him. Kavanaugh has just proven that he's a level above that. So Similar to other spots we've had in the last couple of months. I'm glad it's early because if I'm gonna lose my shirt, it may be rebuild. This card's not the kind of show you want to chase on, by the way. But
It's
get
so
it done
early
early.
it's so
Done
early that you may
early.
not be awake and may not be able to rebuild. So keep that in
No,
mind.
I'll be awake, bro. This is what I do. This is what I do. Take care of two little girls that mean the world to me, my two kids, and just watch fights. It's a job at the Fight Network, breaking down fights with you, matchmaking. My dad told me when I was a kid, if you do something you love, never work a day in your life. Straight up, only time that my dad's ever straight up lied to me because I work way too hard on this crap, but I love it. So it is work, but 3 a.m., buddy. I'll probably give a bottle at 2:30 a.m. and then I'll have my good sweatpants on for this greasy affair that we're having in Macau.
All right, two more fights. Let's get through them. We got Zhao Long taking on Quang Li, minus 118 for Long, plus 100 for Li. Who you got?
Yeah, I got no real good answer here. So Long Zhao, again, he's only 26. He does look like, on one hand, a guy that has a more refined skill set, a little bit more developed, but that's by way of, and you see this all the time with Chinese fighters. What's his record? 26-9? Yeah, so I mean, homie's got 35 pro fights and he's 26 years old. And you've seen that with Ru Zong, right? Zong Ru's probably the best example is that he's like 21 or 22. He's got 35 fights. There's another couple ones. Mongolian Murder just beat one of them. There's a few guys on the roster. This is how they get down. They got 30, 35 fights. And then when you see them, they're lost. Steve Garcia, I think his last fight, same thing. They got the experience level. They're just super gun shy and they're not making it happen. When I look at Long Zhao, he can wrestle a little bit. He can strike a little bit, but he's not prone to just getting outworked in some of these bigger, these bigger exchanges. Been finished a few times by submission, been finished a few times by knockout. All that's a really long time ago. What I do base him on is his fight with Christian Quinones on the Contender Series, which would have been 2021. Close fight with Quinones. He does give up the one takedown. He does get knocked down. Quinones ends up winning the fight. Didn't look bad. Just didn't look like there was any type of real X factor to his game. Comes back on the road to UFC, beats that Shohei Nose, who again, that's one of the better guys on the show, but he did squeak out a close split decision. He wins his next one, and then he gets this Chang Ho Lee in the final. It's a lot of just him going through the motions, strike for strike. He's not throwing more than a 2 or 3 punch combination out there. He'll throw a little bit of a low kick. He likes to prefer to get into the clinch exchanges and shoot the takedowns, but I just can't say it's all that high level for my liking. Someone that can definitely win a low level fight, but not someone that I'm looking to actually put my money on. Quang Li, meanwhile, Quang Li is another one of these guys that should have gone to the Contender Series, was scheduled to be on the Contender Series, and then as fate has it, they need somebody short notice, so they call him up. What I would say here is when you look at him, he's way more traveled as an amateur. Even though he's from Vietnam, he grew up in the States, fought some good guys in the States, traveled a little bit, had some different level of opponents, strikers, grapplers, done okay. Ends up going 7-4 as an amateur. Not great. Then he turns pro, and you learn from those lessons. First round submission, first round neck crank, wins a decision, third round submission, runs into this Sal Guerrero, who's not bad, wins a split decision over him. Then he comes into, these are his two stiffest opponents, Cody Peterson, Tial Tang. Both of those guys for LFA. He knocks them both out in the first round. The kid's got a lot of power. The kid's got a lot of power for sure. He was supposed to fight Aaron Tao on the Contender Series. They canceled the fight, and they give him Chris Gutierrez, Paul. Like, talk about, this is your UFC debut, okay? You didn't win on the Contender Series and get a contract. You should still be on a tryout basis. Having your first fight in the UFC versus a guy that was having his 14th fight in the UFC, who had also competed for World Series of Fighting and also competed for Bellator and LFA. Chris Gutierrez is about as seasoned as you're going to get for a UFC debut. He's a plus 425 underdog. He's not nearly as fast as Gutierrez. He doesn't have the footwork. He doesn't have the wrestling to fall back on like some of these other guys. What does he have? Well, just some power. Is it enough? I'll tell you what, dude. As somebody who had a lot of money on Chris Gutierrez, I didn't feel great about it. This Quang guy's tough. He can take your best shot. He got his leg kicked off and at no point was taking any like real bad steps off it. He's slow. He's plodding. He's looking to line you up with that one big shot. He can 100% get outworked by a longer, faster fighter from the outside. And you could probably take this guy down a little bit, but I don't know that Long is the guy to do it. I think I got one guy that's already made his UFC debut, got it out of the way, got a victory, loses to a ranked top 15 guy of the division, goes the distance with him, has him a little shook in the second round, landed some decent punches. You're going to grow from that. got 2 takedowns. They kept saying like, oh, he should try to take him down more. They should try to take him down more. He's taking this fight on like a week's notice against Chris Gutierrez. Chris Gutierrez quite literally headlined a fight night in his fight prior.
Yep.
And now you're fighting him somewhat competitively. So again, I go back to his regional show record, and it's like he's fought in some decent enough guys. He's fought for LFA 6 times, good promotion. He worked his way up the ladder. They wanted him on the Contender Series. He ends up taking a real tough fight instead. There's something I can work with there. He's a little bit older, like he's not a young prospect, but he's not someone that got into the game at an advanced age. So I think he probably had some type of traditional martial arts background and then eventually decides to do some amateur fights, has a bit of success, decides I should get paid, go into the pro ranks, and then is moving his way up the ladder. So with Long Zhao, he's got 35 pro fights, but has not overly tested himself. And then a split decision and a majority decision, and then a split decision loss. All of his fights are close. They're all pretty well tight. For someone that's got 35 fights, you shouldn't be in these tight split decisions against guys that you're supposed to have twice the level of experience on. And you can counter with, well, he's only 26. He has 35 fights, man. Regardless of if you're fighting bums or not, you still got to make the walk. You still got to get in that cage. You still got to kick somebody and it hits them in the elbow. You still got to land punches. You still got to shoot takedowns. It's hard on your knees. It's hard on your neck. It's hard on your back. You got physiotherapy. You're getting acupuncture. You're not sleeping that good at night. Start taking some pain pills. Start selling some pain pills. Cut from the UFC, it all goes to shit. And that's what happens to guys like Daquan Townsend. So you don't want to be like that. And 35 fights for a 26-year-old is just, you're going to have some burnout effect. I don't doubt that he's getting some burnout effect where Quang Lin just proved to himself, hey, I just hung with a top 15 ranked opponent in my debut, which I accepted on a week's notice. So that confidence should help him. I'm just going to edge ever so slightly in his direction and give him the nod.
Yeah. The market seems to be moving towards, so you're going to be getting probably a better price unless the word of Cody Saftik moves it back to a pick 'em, because I see like plus 117 out on the market right now.
It's basically a pick 'em, and maybe they're going with hometown cooking and hometown advantage, and all that's fair. Quang Lee's, not going to say bang or bust, but if he knocks you out, I'm going to worry about the judges. And if he doesn't knock you out, yeah, okay, probably going to be a close fight. But Zhao's coming off 2 split decisions and a majority in his last 3 fights, so whatever, going to be close. The line's close. If you can get it even better for me, sure, I'll take it.
Yep. All right. And finally, we got the Legend of Mahashat taking on Nicholas Mata, minus 192 for Mahashat. Nicholas Mata can be had for plus 160. Your thoughts on this one?
Wow, so this is one where I just don't love the line, but I got Mahashat. Just near 2-1 is a little bit risque. He got big power, man. I know he's not necessarily getting knockout wins in all of his fights, but he hits you. He's going to do a colossal amount of damage. He seems like he's more suited for a round and a half. Not that he gets tired, is that the wheels start to fall off in that second and third round. He's not able to make adjustments, change anything on the fly. Once you figure out his rhythm or his timing, kind of gets stuck in a bit of a lull. His fight with Steve Garcia, you definitely kicked my ass on that one. But Steve ran face first into Mahashat, and that's not somebody you want to do that to, because Mahashat will ice you, which he does. Steve Garcia has since gone on one hell of a run, but Mahashat's got a lot of power. His fight with Rafa Garcia, he misses weight. It's a bit of a wonky version of him. I thought he started well. The longer the fight goes, starts to fall apart a little bit for him. His fight with Vyacheslav Borshev knocked him down 3 times prior to KOing him in the second round. So now you've got Steve Garcia had hurt, not really hurt him, I suppose. Borshev knocks him out. This is the guy that's going to stand in front of you. He's an exchange in the pocket type fighter. If he doesn't have the durability, then it's just, yeah, maybe he's just going to be one of these guys that's first round knockout or bust. And then his fight with Gabriel Benitez, I'll give him props. I thought he lost on a personal standpoint. I had money on Gabriel Benitez on a personal standpoint. Mahashat went 3 good rounds, dude. He's getting his leg kicked off. He was getting it worked. He has good power. He can land close to 90, 100 significant strikes. His chin's really not that bad. His cardio looked better. And he's only 24 years old. But unlike his, compatriots from China that are fighting 35 times, he's not like that. He's got 13 pro fights. He's done it the right way. Taken tough fights, tested himself, and grown from that. And I do expect this guy to get a little bit better. Nicholas Mota is just like Mahashat, but to me, I think he's more like set in his ways. So he's bang or bust. If he knocks you out, it's gonna be in the first round. If you can extend this guy out, he's not very good. His wins in the UFC, his fights in the UFC. First fight with Jim Miller, he gets knocked down in the second round. Jim hadn't knocked out a guy in a while, so it was shocking. Mata was the favorite. Paul Shaughnessy cashed on that Jim Miller ticket. But Jim knocks him out. It wasn't exactly a great look. He got doubled up 48-21 and then knocked out. It's not a good look. Fights Cameron Van Camp, knocks out Van Camp. First round. Van Camp then gets released. Van Camp never fights MMA again. Manuel Torres knocks him out in the first round. Trey Ogden wrecks him for 3 rounds, out grapples him for 3 rounds easy. No contest because Mata didn't tap, but really he's on his way to losing a 327. None of this is good. And then boom, he hits as a big underdog against Tom Nolan by first round knockout. Tom Nolan was supposed to be a good prospect. What we've seen is that he's not very good, doesn't have great durability, a little bit chinny, been dropped a whole pile of times. For Mata to go out there and land, he's capable of landing. He's got quick little boxing combinations. He spends a lot of time with Texera at BJJ over with Glover and Alex Pereira. He can strike a little bit. He can grapple a little bit. But he's just not all that good in any one area. And his durability, his confidence, his pace, his ability to fight into a second and third round, that's all massively questionable to me. So he needs to go out there and knock out Mahashat, which is possible. Borshev dropped him 3 times before putting him away. But that's dropping him 3 times, dude. He got up 2 of those times. Borshev is a good kickboxer. I wouldn't say world class, but certainly a top level kickboxer. Steve Garcia, he's got all the power in the world. He couldn't put him away. If you don't just put him away, I'm starting to feel like the second and the third round, he's going to start pulling it into his domain. Against Gabriel Benitez is a mid-30-year-old, 10-plus UFC fights under his belt, trained at probably 20 UFC fights under his belt, trained at American Kickboxing Academy with Islam Makhachev and Khabib Nurmagomedov forever. That's a stiff test. Regardless of if it was a robbery split decision, he went 3 rounds with a guy that I rate a lot higher than Nicholas Mota. So I would say Mota comes out, has some early success in the first round, first minute, first 2 minutes, maybe lands a little bit. At some point, they're just going to collide in the center and both land. And at that point, I think Mahashat knocks Nicholas Mota out. If he doesn't knock Nicholas Mota out, I think he can wrestle in a little bit, use some of his offensive wrestling, some of his cage control time, some significant strikes, and eke it out that way. But in both scenarios, either knock this guy out or win a tight decision. I do feel like Mahashat gets the job done. It's the minus 197. Don't feel great about a fight that's nearly 2-1. So need to reel back a little bit from that standpoint. But from the who's going to win this fight standpoint, Nicholas Mott is like 2-4 in the UFC. He's coming in to do a job. And Mahashat, still young, very marketable in China. You mentioned it's the first fight on the card, which is super weird because it's one of the better fights on the card. When I look at this card, Mahashat, he's fun. He's entertaining. Long Xiao, I don't think he's very good. Loner Kavanagh, I don't know that I 100% consider him a Chinese man, but he is repping China. I'll give him that. Feng, Yaozan Feng, awful. Ming Shi, awful. Kiru Sahota, he's actually repping Great Britain. He's not very good. Bengling Jinsi, awful. Mingyang Zhang, awful. Kong Wang, I rate. Song Kenan, he'd be fringe 25. Like, they need real fighters. They need to develop, as we talked about how Japan's developing and Korea's developing. They need to develop that wave. Mahashat could be good. You don't want to throw this guy into the lions. And I think they're just going to look to bring him up the right way. Nothing sells more than a highlight reel finish. And Nicholas Mata is a highlight reel fighter. Either he's going to knock you out or you're going to knock him out. But there's going to be a highlight generated from it. And I feel like that highlight's going in Mahashat's favor.
It's going to be super violent.
Violence.
Mata's very, very... The difference between these two guys, I think Mata's got a little bit more power, definitely, in his hands, but...
They can crack. They both can crack, though.
But I see one guy has heart, and one guy, when things start going against him, he seems to crumble. So I understand why Mahashat is the favorite here. There's no way I would touch it with a 10-foot pole, though. Probably a better live entry because I think Mata, if you're up at this time, I think Mata's going to have some success early. So a Mata by KO prop, like plus 375, like I feel like that's most of his path to victory here. Volume isn't necessarily great on him. Don't hate that if you're going to go the Mata route. Just go with the knockout because the longer this fight goes on, I feel like the more it's going to favor Mahashat, who throws a little bit more volume, stays more active, and the power kind of deteriorates. And I don't want to say like the interest in hanging around the fight seems to wane sometimes with Mata. Plus, on top of that, you factor in that Mata's flying to the other side of the world to fight at what will be 3 o'clock Eastern time. If he trains in Vegas, it's midnight when this fight starts. So, yeah, let's hope for all of the people coming over from the U.S. that they've acclimatized, because jet lag and all of that can get the best of any man. But that is if. Or wait, we're just about out of time, Cody. But before we go, hit him with the PRP.
Yeah, gotta hit them with the PRP. I think China's exactly 12 hours difference, so it's polar opposite of our time. So I'm gonna hit you with a reverse PRP. We're gonna go with Maha Shot. We're gonna go with Quang Lee. We're gonna go with Loner Kavanaugh, who I do like. Carlos Hernandez, Feng Xiaonan, Kiru Sahota. I think that's dog number 1, but those are all even money fights. Sung Young Yu, same boat. Ozzy Diaz, he is dog number 1. Carlos Ulberg, Wang, Cong, Muslim Salikhov, don't love, but he's going to be dog number 2 officially. Tabatha, Ricci, dog number 3. She's 29 years old, Paul. You see improvements from fight to fight. Jan's 35 years old. That decline's coming, baby. So give me Ricci for dog number 3, and then Petr, Jan, Deiveson, Figueiredo. What I will leave you with that on the main event is maybe a good live betting spot. Like, we know Jan is a slow starter who's given up plenty of first and second rounds, and Figgy is kind of a quick starter. Like, he needs to win the first couple rounds. If you don't like paying the minus 300 on Jan, I don't blame you, but you might be able to get this thing closer to like minus 175, maybe minus 120 at some point in the second to the early third round. And then at that point, Jan does what he always does, which is that train gets on the track and it just starts heading 100 miles an hour and there's no slowing it down. So Jan wins. If you don't want to pay it up front, this is a good live betting spot to maybe take a poke at that main event.
The only correction I'll make on your PRP there is you said Salikhov, dog number 2, not a dog.
Oh, Salikhov's a favorite. Oh, geez, do I even want this guy? Listen, he'll be right at the bottom. I will give the UFC props, okay? So in my mind, wake up at 3 a.m., I watch Maha Shot. Bang. Then I get a quick little pee break here because I don't quite care for Zhang Lao versus Quang Lee, for being honest with you. Then I'm all in on Loner Kavanaugh. All my money's on Loner Kavanaugh. And then I do care about Carlos Hernandez. I think he wins that. And then I get 3 fights that I can essentially go back to bed for like an hour and a half.
Risky.
Wake up and watch Ozzy Diaz. You got to make sure you tune into Ozzy Diaz in time, though, because that one's not going to last long. And then, I actually do care about this main card. It's nice. It's just, I understand you got to develop talent. The way you develop talent is give guys opportunities to inspire other people in different regions and different gyms and get these guys paid and get them better training and better coaching. Like, it's such a long process to develop athletes. I get it, but are half of these guys UFC quality? No. And yet we're betting on them. So there's other stuff going on this weekend as well. Maybe have a look at that. But yeah, for the most part, those are my 13 UFC picks.
Coolbet.com, promo code dog or pass. Deposit $200, get $200, bet that 3x or bet $600 worth of bets, and you get that other $200. You're free to take it and do with it whatever you will. That is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For producer Jared and Cody Saftik, I'm Paul Shaughnessy, saying goodbye and good luck.